Go ahead. Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening to hear about what to look forward to in the upcoming general election. Early voting, October 26th to November 2nd, and day of election, November 3rd. Coping with the many changes to vote in this year's election due to public health crisis of COVID-19, checking your voting status, meeting key deadlines, vote centers instead of polling sites, official ballot that includes 6 questions, 4 from Montgomery County and 2 statewide questions. Getting to know the candidates who are running for specific offices. And tonight we will have an opportunity to hear from those who are running to serve on the Board of Election, Board of Education, and Circuit Court Judge. For early voting, we have 11 voting centers, and on the day of election, November 3rd, we will have 39 centers. This year, you will have the opportunity to vote at any vote center in Montgomery County instead of your original polling place in your neighborhood. If you requested a mail-in ballot, also known as absentee ballot, this year the form is one of the same. The official ballot should be mailed to you sometime within the next 2 weeks. We are recommending that you do not mail your ballot. Instead, it is recommended that you place your ballot in one of the official drop boxes that are available throughout the county. At the moment, there are only 3 drop boxes open: Rockville City Hall, Executive Office Building, and Board of Election. If you have already requested your official ballot, you cannot vote at the vote centers. However, you can drop your ballot off in the official drop-off ballot box after you received it. If you try to vote after requesting your ballot, you will have to vote with a provisional ballot. So please do not try to vote if you have already requested your mail-in and/or absentee ballot. We are encouraging you to check your voting status online. The reason for this is to make sure you are using the information that Maryland Board of Elections has on file. Checking your status would also let you know when you requested your ballot application and when you received your official ballot. It would also give you the date to which the official ballot was mailed to you. I know this is a lot of information and is relevant to the 2020 November election. We strongly recommend that you know what is on the ballot. The candidates. This year, there are 6 ballot questions, 4 of Montgomery County and 2 for Maryland. Tonight, again, you will have the opportunity to hear from the candidates for the Board of Education and the judge for Circuit Court. And finally, here's good news. Or we can say we are getting into good trouble by offering our voters an opportunity for us to provide rides for souls to the polls. Also, a point of information, the county is in need of election workers. Again, because of COVID-19, individuals who usually work at the polls are not participating as much as we would like for them to do so. So sign up to work the polls if you're able. Let us hear from you if you are in need of assistance or would like to know what else we are doing to ensure that everyone votes in this year's 2020 general election. We must all vote like our lives depend on it. You can send an email to news.onpoint1952.com or bmoultrie at mountcalvary at mtcal.org. Also, please jot down this email address to get more information on ballot, voter information and registration, election workers from the Montgomery County Board of Elections, www.777vote.org.
Hi, I'm Jordan Lindsay with Montgomery Community Media. I have Dr. Gilberto Zelaya joining me from the Montgomery County Board of Elections. What are some things that Montgomery County residents should know when it comes to the general election in November?
So the big difference between the primary and the general election, beyond the date, obviously, that it's November 3rd, is that the Maryland State Board of Elections will mail every single registered voter a vote by mail, known formally as absentee ballot application. So you could receive your ballot at home, but you have to actively request this ballot to be mailed. Montgomery County highly recommends that voters don't wait until the State Board of Elections mails the vote by mail application. You could do that today. And it actually helps our staff to process this request as opposed to being inundated with, let's say, 500,000 requests to vote by mail in October. Please don't procrastinate. Apply today. You could text the letters VBM for vote by mail, VBM, to 77788, or you could visit us on our website at 777vote.org, or you could give us a call at 240-777-8550, and we'll gladly help you get an application so you could vote by mail November 3rd. So the one thing we also encourage individuals is to register to vote. The voter registration deadline is Tuesday, October 13th.
Hogan said the upcoming election will be an all of the above election with the most choices possible. Can you maybe explain that to our viewers, what that could mean?
So what Hogan meant basically is it's going to be a somewhat normal elections as in year past. We will have precinct level election day voting locations. We will have early voting sites. Montgomery County has 11, and individuals could vote by mail. But the problem and the challenges we're having right now is we're having a challenge identifying civic-minded individuals to serve as election poll workers November 3rd and during early voting. What does that mean to the voters? We're looking to consolidate precincts. So if you're accustomed to going to X location, let's say I vote at Hallie Wells, I live in Clarksburg, my polling place might move to Clarksburg High School. And if you, let's say, if I voted in Clarksburg High School, there's a high possibility that they're going to merge neighboring precincts or locations into a particular polling place. So that's going to cause long lines. In addition, there's two ways you could vote by mail: the traditional cardstock official ballot or request a web delivery ballot. We highly recommend you vote the official because then we don't have to transcribe and duplicate that ballot. It's much quicker. Because web delivery, you have to use your paper, your envelope, you pay postage, and you have to print your ballot. Using the official, we cover all the expenses, we give you all the instructions and the ballot, and postage is paid. It's so much easier, it's very convenient and safe.
There's false claims or alleged false claims that the Postal Service is asking people to send their vote by mail ballots in at least 2 weeks, give it a 2-week time frame or something of that sort. Mm-hmm. Can you address these claims and set the record straight?
Yeah, so we've been seeing that as well, circulating in social media. By all means, voting is secure, the post office is intact, but keep in mind, if you have any concerns, the second you receive your vote by mail ballot, once you request it, we're going to have official Montgomery County Board of Election designated ballot drop boxes across the county. So if you have concerns with that round trip of your ballot getting back to the Board of Elections, just drive to one of our designated ballot drop boxes. We will be promoting that in the near weeks. So by all means, once you get your ballot, if you voted, deposit it in one of the sanctioned ballot drop boxes. And so you know, we will have bipartisan teams of staff emptying out those ballot boxes across Montgomery County twice a day and on Sunday. So the post office is closed on Sunday. We'll be working throughout the election process in the season. So by all means, use the ballot drop box if you have any concerns, but the post office is intact. We are in need of election poll workers. We would love for individuals to serve in said capacity. We are actually, the stipend, we have increased it to up to $310 or 25 student service learning hours per day.
Thank you, Dr. Zelaya. And this is Jordan Lindsay reporting for MyMC Media.
You just suck on air.
Hold on.
Okay, is everyone in? I apologize. We had an information session on voting that went over just a little bit, but we are now ready to start as soon as we have everyone. Okay, there we go. I think we have everyone now. So, hello and good afternoon. We welcome you and thank you for joining us for this candidate forum. I'm Reverend Barry Moultrie, your host for this evening. The Mount Calvary Baptist Church family, in partnership with the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation, is sponsoring this forum to provide as much insight and perspective as we can to the voting public, specifically in two categories this evening: the candidate for Board of Education, as well as the candidates for Circuit Court judges. Let me be clear, neither myself, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, Miss Anita Neal Powell, nor the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation are endorsing, supporting, or promoting any specific candidate. We are adamantly and aggressively encouraging every eligible and able-bodied person to vote and exercise their right to vote. And in addition to voting, we want everyone to be clear about their candidates of choice and why. Our first session this evening is with the candidates for the Board of Education. Our first session this evening is the candidates for Board of Education, and joining us in this forum is Dr. Sunil Dasgupta, Mr. Michael Fryer, Ms. Shebra Evans, Ms. Lynn Harris, Ms. Rebecca Smondrowski, Mr. Steve Solomon. Let me remind you all that this is a question and answer forum, not a debate. All responses should be addressed to me and not to other candidates. We have a series of prepared and vetted questions, and we hope to have other questions submitted by the viewing audience. We're streaming this forum this evening on our Mount Calvary Baptist Rockville YouTube channel. We are monitoring the chat on that channel and invite any viewer to submit questions through the chat function. We will only ask questions that we can ask every candidate. Therefore, if your question is for an individual candidate, we will not be asking that in this setting. I know I don't need to say this, but I will for the sake of clarity. Aggressive attacks will not be allowed or tolerated, so we ask that you be mindful of your words and their impact. We do want you to be expressive because we are giving you the opportunity to allow our constituents to know who you are and gain insight and perspective into who they will be putting in office. We do ask that you represent yourself in this forum well. While we are aware of voting blocks, teams, and partnerships, we don't allow proxy representation of those who are not participating in this forum, so we ask that you only speak for yourself. As we begin, we will give each candidate 90 seconds to introduce themselves. While your degrees and education may be of importance, we do implore that you share with the audience why you are running for this office and why you should be their candidate of choice. Questions will be asked on a rotating basis and responses will be timed. For each question, you'll be allotted what we believe will be a sufficient amount of time. We ask that you honor that so that we can fairly and equally hear from each of you. I will be monitoring the time and will let you know when you have about 15 seconds remaining on your time. When your time is up, you will be notified, and if you continue, I will have no choice but to mute your microphone. I will not use other candidates' time apologizing, so let me just do that right now up front. I apologize for anybody that I mute and cut off, but we will try to monitor and honor the time. At the end, you each will be given an equal amount of time for any closing statements or wrap-up comments, and that will be based on the time that we have left. I hope that is informative and We will start with the introductions and I will go in alphabetical order based on last name. So Dr. Sunil Dasgupta, you are first and you have 90 seconds, sir.
Thank you to Mount Calvary Baptist Church and to the organizers. My name is Sunil Dasgupta and I'm running for the Board of Education at-large seat in Montgomery County on November 3rd elections. I'm a first-generation immigrant, a parent of 3 MCPS students, and a professor at a public university in the county. What is interesting about what I've been doing is that 90% of my students are MCPS graduates. And I've been teaching online for a number of years. So I know what works and what doesn't. This experience with academic program building and online education are going to be particularly important going forward. Like many of you, I started on schools advocacy because one of my kids fell through the cracks. And as I investigated more, I found that the teachers were stressed, the home and school partnership wasn't quite working, and we had a youth mental health crisis on our hands. So I pushed for our students, and I felt like I was, at some point banging my head on a wall. And finally, I said to myself last December, it's either time to put up or shut up. And so I decided to put up. The first priority of any school leader has to be to improve learning outcomes and the well-being of students, and it is mine as well. The harder question, of course, is how we get there. We are looking at recovering from academic and other losses from the pandemic. We've had difficulty making distance learning work, address student and staff trauma and mental health. And now I don't see any serious signs of planning for an eventual reopening of schools. These are challenges that are going to demand—
Your time is up. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Is that is my time up?
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next is Mr. Michael Fryer.
Hello, all. Good evening, and thank you for being available and joining us tonight. My name is Michael Fryer. I have 30 years experience in education, starting as an elementary school teacher, teaching inner city as well as suburban. I then became a social worker with Child Protection Services before finally earning my law degree and representing children and families that were involved in various legal issues, particularly education, as that was my background. I expanded into a few other areas. And my primary focus has always been children and education, up to including representing parents who had retained me to prevent the takeover of a public school by a charter. I have spent those 30 years advocating for children, teaching children, and making sure that everyone is going to get the fairest, most possible outcome that they can through opportunity. Now, I am a recent resident to Montgomery County. Both of my children do attend public school here, but I do come out of Hartford, Connecticut, which faces a large number of the problems that Montgomery has come to face. One of them, distance learning. I've actually designed curriculum and looked at systems for delivery, both at a collegiate level. I actually designed courses in classrooms. Thank you. For online learning, as well as a private company, which I did academic training and development for online. So what we're kind of facing now, while classroom education falls in my wheelhouse, particularly online education and delivery is also something that I'm used to.
Your time is up. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Shebra Evans.
Good evening. Thank you to the organizers for putting on this candidate forum. Again, I am Shebra Evans. I currently serve as the president on the Board of Education, and I am running for re-election for my second term on the board. I have lived in Montgomery County for over 19 years, have 2 daughters in the public school system, both in high school, one a freshman and one a senior. I use my parenting hat as well as my board member hat to help guide me as I make decisions on the board. I'm running for re-election because I'm proud of the work that we've done here in Montgomery County to close the gaps in disparities and in achievement. There is more work for us to continue to do. And I am here wanting to do that work if you see fit to re-elect me. So I look forward to engaging in conversation tonight and having you to know me better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Ms. Lynn Harris.
Hi, thank you very much, Mount Calvary Baptist Church and the Lincoln Park Historical Association for hosting this forum. And I think it is so important that organizations like you give voters the opportunity to do their homework before they go to the polls. My name is Lynn Harris. I'm running for the at-large seat on the Board of Education because I have a passion for public education. I truly believe it is a great equalizer, and it is one way that we can pay it forward to create the next generation of leaders that our country so desperately needs. I am a parent in the school system. My son is a senior. I am now also in my 5th year teaching in the system, but I've learned about this school system. And the reason primarily I'm running for this office is that I've spent 12 years as an advocate in this system as a volunteer. Got my start as a PTA person when my son started kindergarten, and, you know, raised my hand to volunteer for something, and then moved up through local PTA to the countywide PTA, where I worked as vice president of advocacy and served as the president for almost 3 years. And through that work, partnering with communities, with families, with teachers, with students all across Montgomery County, I learned a tremendous about the school system, and a tremendous about how we can do better to serve our 166,000 students. I deeply believe that partnering with students, partnering with communities, learning what they know about us, everybody else does, is the way to move forward.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Rebecca Simondrowski.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rebecca Simondrowski. Thank you all for holding this and for being here. I'm in my 2nd term serving as a strong voice for students, staff, and family, and representing District 2 on the Board of Education, and serving as chair for Special Populations Committee. I believe that we need to be providing a positive school experience for all children, and that means something different for everyone. I'm the mother of 2 MCPS graduates, a son who's in the military who graduated from the Bridge program at Gaithersburg High School, and a daughter who has graduated from Quince Orchard and attends the University of Mississippi. I think that, you know, it's hard to get to know somebody in such a short amount of time, but I'm appreciative of having this chance to just say a few words. My job on the Board of Education really is to make sure that all students have what they need in order to succeed. And then, like I said, that means a lot of things for different students, more than just getting A's and B's. It's about being engaged, being connected, feeling safe and secure, and wanting to be in school. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've done a lot of work in my time on the board, and I look forward to continuing those efforts as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We do appreciate all of your introductory remarks, and I thank you. I didn't ask you, and I probably should have, but each of you unmuted yourself in a timely fashion and then put yourself back on mute. So I think during this pandemic time, we have learned to smoothly navigate Zoom. Well, I really appreciate that. So we're going to get right into the.
Don't forget Mr. Solomon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. The last but not least, Mr. Steve Solomon.
That's okay. Thank you, Reverend Moultrie and Anita and everyone at Mount Calvary for putting this together again. I'm Steve Solomon. I'm running for Board of Education District 4. It's good to see my 5 candidate colleagues again. It's been a little while since our last forum. And I'm running because I'm a lifelong resident of this county, and I'm tired of saying we should change this and not doing anything about it. So I decided to run for office, and I've done it a couple times now and learned a little more each time. And I want to do the best that our schools can be. I think that we have great schools. As a lifelong resident, I've seen that and know that. And I just think we can do a little bit better on a few things. I think we need to provide more opportunities for kids to see what's out there in the world. I plan on doing this by expanding vocational programs to more schools in Montgomery County. I want to make sure that we retain the best teachers, that teachers don't come and go, and that we retain the best ones, which is how you have the most successful students as well. And I want to make sure all our schools are safe and modern, and we don't have schools that are 50 years old and keep asking the county for money every year. Those are some of my goals. I hope they're real issues that can that voters and parents out there can see are issues that they see as well. And I hope to share some more with you as the evening goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I do apologize for leaving you off of the initial list, so I
No
do
problem.
apologize for that. So let's go right into the questions and answers, if you will. And so what we're going to do, and I'm praying that this works well, but to make sure that we add some flair to this and mix things up, we're going to ask the same questions of every candidate, but they're going to be out of order, and different candidates are going to be starting with different questions. So bear with me, and I have a few people that are going to keep me straight. So hopefully we can do this without any challenges. The first question goes to Dr. Sunil Dasgupta. And first, the goal of district-wide boundary analysis is to help MCPS better understand the impact that existing boundaries have on school overcrowding, school diversity, and student proximity to school. Redistricting involves a set of complex relationships encompassing facilities usage, transportation, budgeting, and educational programming tools. The question is, what is your position on the role of community engagement to support all steps in the change process and the need to address diversity in the district-wide boundary analysis?
Okay. So I think community engagement is absolutely important, and diversity is a key goal in what happens with boundaries. The problem with boundaries is that that they exist, but they seem to exist forever. And while population and demography changes, the boundaries remain the same, and they create imbalances. In diversity, they create imbalances for utilization. We also know that's over 30% of our students don't go to the school that is nearest to them. So there are many imbalances that need to be fixed, and the community is absolutely a central part of how we go about addressing those issues. There's been some concern that community engagement has not worked, or where the communities have resisted change, that they have not come back, that that the board has had difficulty making decisions. And so I think the important part about that is that I bring to the board, if I were elected, a coalition that is truly countywide, right? That helps us get to a system-wide approach to boundary change rather than a cluster-based approach to boundary change. The other thing that I have suggested is that there be some difference, there'd be some time between announcement of a decision to change boundaries and the actual coming into force of those changes. I've put a lot of these ideas out. I am perhaps the only Board of Education candidate that has a written up plan. I'm
sorry, let me interrupt you for just a second. I do apologize. I don't believe I gave you the time limit for the answer.
Okay.
To begin with. So
okay.
we're allowing 2 minutes to answer these questions. And so you've got 30 seconds left. So
all right.
I apologize.
I'm going to do the 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right. So, so I have a written up plan that is on my website, sunildasgupta.com. Please go there. This is a complex issue, as Reverend Moultrie pointed out. And so it takes time to sort of explain the various parts of it. But I have a plan to take us forward.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And I do apologize for not explaining that in advance. And so for each of these questions, there's a 2-minute limit for everyone. So the next question is going to Ms. Shebra Evans. And before each question, I'm giving you just a little context, and then I'll ask the question. Sure. Reading scores among all students subgroups have been on a moderate decline for several years in Montgomery County Public Schools. According to research, once students reach 4th grade, a pivotal change occurs in education where children are no longer learning to read, but they are reading to learn. The question is, how can the school district get ahead of the declining reading performance data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
Sure. Thank you for that question. One thing the board has done, the board brought forward a resolution just a couple of months back to make certain that we get the information on all of our students prior to third grade, because we know that studies show that if our students are not prepared to read by third grade, it will be very difficult for them going forward. So literacy has been a huge priority for the board. We have our equity and accountability framework where we are monitoring and measuring the performance of our students. And we're making certain that we know in advance if our students are learning. If so, how do we know? If they're learning, how much are they learning? We have multiple measures that we're using to ensure that our students are getting where they need to be. So I really believe that Montgomery County is on a great path to ensuring that our students are on the right track, but there is still much work to do. We are seeing where students of color are not quite at the levels that we would like for them to be. So we are asking questions. We have a new curriculum that really goes deep in terms of making certain that our students are on track. They understand the information that is being disseminated to them. So we, our curriculum was adopted in February of 2019. So a lot of our students right now are getting the curriculum. Our whole entire school district is getting access to that curriculum as we speak, because we wanted to make certain that those issues that we see our students facing with reading will not be a problem going forward. And I'm gonna make sure I'm not going over my time. So
20 seconds.
Yeah, I've completed.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Michael Fryer. Our school system offers separate programs in certain schools, such as the highly gifted centers, immersion programs, middle school magnet programs, etc. The question is, what one program or service in the county school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? Is there a program or service you would add to ensure the success of all students? Mr. Michael Fryer.
So that's a similar question to asking someone, what's your favorite movie or song, you know, in a galaxy of billions of things. Clearly not that large a variety here. So every program developed to service a student or a student population. There is no wasted program. The question becomes not, is that program specifically, should it be eliminated, modified? But is it doing its job? Is it reaching its population? If it was a program developed in order to reach one specific population in one area and that population has dwindled, can that program be moved or removed over to another area? My son is a special education student. He's hearing issues. So, you know, we have found in school enrollment that there are some schools that don't have any hard of hearing or hearing impaired students. So they don't have a hearing program. So that's kind of what echoes when I hear this. It makes me anxious. Oh, well, we don't have students that have that particular need here, so we're just going to eliminate the program. When in fact a student could come along, or a population of students could come along the next year, you know, and need that program. Or there's a population of students that are in another area that could require it. So the question is interesting. It's unfortunately very broad. I think if there was a specific program we could discuss, that would be great. But to ask about the entire plethora of programs throughout Montgomery County and say, well, pick one. Well, I could target, I think the first one you said was talented and gifted, higher education.
20 seconds.
That program can be easily modified. It should be expanded. Without question, we shouldn't have individual programs. We should have schools dedicated to it to allow for a larger thing. And there's a whole kinds of education theory that goes in behind that. So I guess I'm not answering the question. I apologize. I'm not sure that there's a possible answer to it. So I'm sorry.
Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Harris. And it's disproportionate suspension rates, achievement gaps, and varied class placements advanced placement classes, over-identification of students in special education classes are issues that reflect significant difference between the school performance of Black and Brown students and their white and Asian counterparts. The question, Ms. Harris, is how would you address the disparities between student subgroups? How would you influence the fair and impartial enrollment of Black and Latino students in accelerated and gifted / enriched and talented instruction programs?
Such a good and timely question. I think we are in a moment nationally when we are taking a really hard look at institutional racism and a centuries-long history of discrimination in pretty much everything our country has done that elevates people of white and Caucasian backgrounds and diminishes opportunities for people of color. And I think the school system has to be courageous enough to, we're doing a system-wide anti-racism audit, but we need to be brave enough to work hip to shoulder with our students and with our staff members to take a look at every single policy, every single program, every single way we do business in the school system, and objectively look at it through the lens that I have so appreciated hearing and learning more about from Dr. Ephraim Kendi, which is if it has the effect of negatively and disproportionately impacting students of color, by definition, the program, the policy, the opportunity, the way we do business is racist, and we need to change it. So I think the first thing that I would do is simply acknowledge, yes, our discipline program, our discipline policies are racist because they have a demonstrably negative, disproportionately negative impact on our students of color. So we need to talk to our students to figure out specifically what their experience is of that policy, the disciplinary policy, if we want to talk about that. If, their experience, lived experience in our schools is expressed in the Black Instagram accounts. And we need to take that as a starting place for investigating every single thing we do as a school system.
Well, you had your own timer. Thank you so much. The next question is for Ms. Simondrowski.
Sure.
In light of today's events related to social justice, it has come to light that our students are not taught the full comprehensive story of America. What strategies will you employ to ensure that the district provides a curriculum that is inclusive and representative of our diverse student population?
Thank you for the question. It's a good one. I would say that I'd have to do what we have already now begun doing. We are working on making sure that we are updating our curriculum, particularly in all of those areas. We've put together interest groups to come and give us advisory. We put together advisory groups representing all of the different aspects of our population and to really make sure that they see themselves being represented in the curriculum. We have to be honest and we've got to be factual, and we need to make sure that we are including cultural sensitivity and respect lessons in those things. We are really trying to make sure that when our advisory groups have strong representation, not just from teachers, but from parents, from students, from staff at all different levels, and incorporating leaders in those areas from beyond just the school system. So I do think it's really important that we get the true story of the history of America. I think that understanding leads to compassion, and the only way that we are going to be able to understand each other and our history and what every one of us, how different every one of us is and what we're all made of, and is by really making sure that that's incorporated into our curriculum.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. The next question is to Mr. Solomon. We expect all students to perform at a high level. Although I personally think one of the biggest problems that we have in our school system, especially for Black and brown students, is low expectations by the staff. The question is, what is your assessment of the current state of how the school system has handled student remote learning? Moving forward, what measures would or should the school system implement to address potential problems in the future? Mr. Solomon.
Oh, I get the remote learning question, huh? Okay. Well, obviously it's been a challenge to every school district around the country, and Montgomery County has been no different. There's stories that parents and kids can tell you across the county of kids obviously falling behind because of remote learning. They're not engaged, they're not interested. And I think that what we did last spring is as good as they did in a lot of ways. A lot of kids never saw teachers at all for weeks at a time. They were given assignments, and I thought that was unacceptable, that there was little to no teacher interaction across many schools. So I thought how we handled it was very good in a lot of ways, obviously, which every school had to deal with this in their own way. But the ability to not interact with a teacher directly really hinders our kids. And we see that a lot of special education students who already had challenges with their own learning in a in-person school have even expanded challenges in remote learning. So it's obviously something that we're struggling with in Montgomery County. Every school district's different. If you ask one parent, they want us to go back. One said, I don't want to go back. So obviously it's something that parents feel strongly about. But I think we need to find a way to get kids back in school safely at some point. I think we'll all probably agree on that kind of answer. And when that happens, God willing, it'll be something that can salvage any other kid from falling further behind. But remote learning, it's great for a lot of people. It works great in college. It doesn't work for elementary school kids. It's just not a possibility. So I think we need to move past it and find a way to get us back in school, combined obviously with Dr. Gales, Mark Ellerich, the council, to make our whole county, as we gradually move into points of phases, keep doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. So the next question will be back to you, Mr. Solomon. And each time I'm going to have to read the context and the question so that you'll know what I'm asking. And it's the goal of district-wide boundary analysis is to help MCPS better understand the impact that existing boundaries have on school overcrowding, student diversity, and the student proximity to schools. Redistricting involves a set of complex relationships encompassing facilities usage, transportation, budgeting, and educational programming goals. The question is, what is your position on the role of community engagement to support all steps in the change process and the need to address diversity in the district-wide boundary analysis?
Okay, well, one of the reasons I became interested in the Board of Education race was this boundary issue, and it's really polarized our county in a lot of voices from both sides that I found to be divisive very much. So I want our schools to obviously be as diverse as possible and get everyone the best education possible. And community engagement is obviously a huge part of that. We need that on all issues involving board policy and decisions, let alone enormous ones that might impact your child's future like this one. I really think, though, that there's ways to do this to compromise parents not having their children pulled out of school, sent somewhere else, disrupting their family, their friends, their life at one school, and ways of not having that at all. And I think that the school choice issue is the way to do it. We have schools that are undercrowded. There's spots available at those schools. Let's open that up to either a lottery system or a choice system where kids can actually pick, hey, these spots at this school, that this has a program I really like, I can go there. Let me get the choice to go there. I think that would be great. And it would alleviate a lot of problems that some people have with the boundary study. Obviously, Dr. Dasgupta said it. We need to do these studies and have them implemented, because there are kids not going to the school closest to them. There's the practicality of that in and of itself is a problem, that we don't have kids going to the closest school just out of sheer geography. So that's one of the issues. And the community engagement, if this had been along the way of the study, it could have avoided a lot of the problems that we see today. So I think there's compromises that can be made in the boundary study. And
2 seconds.
Yeah, if elected, I hope to be the great compromiser and bring those two sides together. Thank you.
Thank you. So going forward, I'm just going to hold up this index card. That will be your signal that you have about 20 seconds left. If you don't mind, I appreciate that. So the next question will be to Ms. Harris. In light of today's events related to social justice, it has come to light that our students are not taught the full comprehensive story of America's history. What strategies will you employ to ensure that the district provides a curriculum that is inclusive and representative of our diverse student population?
Well, I'm hopeful that one of the 6 areas of analysis with the system-wide anti-racist audit that's happening is looking at our curriculum. But we can't do an effective review of our K-12 curriculum without partnering with students who are receiving that curriculum every day in their classrooms and the teachers who teach it, asking them for their objective perspective about how inclusive that curriculum is, how accurately it reflects the totality of a reality as a country. And when we see areas that are inadequate, populations and people who are not represented but are so important to who we become as a country, then that needs to be adapted. And I really do think the school system needs to allow students and teachers the autonomy to migrate away from pre-delivered curriculum when we're seeing that curriculum is not adequately inclusive and is missing so much of what we need to be focusing on. And I think now, one thing I can say as an MCPS teacher, I think we're going through a time of crisis. One thing that happens when you go through a time of crisis is you learn things you never thought you would, you try things you never intended to. And I think what we're learning now is that we have far more adaptive tools at our disposal day to day in the classroom environment, so that we do have the power to adapt on the fly our curriculum if we see that it's not meeting the needs of our students and it's not fully reflecting the diversity of our students in our county. That's day to day in the classroom, but the wholesale soup to nuts curriculum review.
Thank you so much. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
The next question is to Mr. Fryer. Mr. Fryer, our school system offers separate programs in certain schools, such as highly gifted centers, immersion programs, middle school magnet programs, etc. What one program or service in the county's school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? And is there a program or service you would add to ensure the success of all students?
Well, we ran into the first hiccup. You've already asked me that question.
I do apologize.
It's okay. It's complicated and you're shifting. It's all good.
So here we go. Disproportionate suspension rates, achievement gaps, and varied classroom placements, i.e. advanced placement classes, over-identification of students in special education classes, are issues that reflect significant difference between the school performance of Black and brown students and their white and Asian counterparts. How would you address the disparities between student subgroups? How would you influence the fair and impartial enrollment of Black and Latino students in accelerated and gifted, talented instructional programs?
Well, it's unfortunate this is a problem that is not limited to Montgomery County. This is a national issue. And different areas have implemented different things to some degrees of success. One thing that has to happen is programs have to be expanded. If you're noticing that there is a point you're reaching where you're excluding student populations, for instance, from advanced coursework or gifted and talented programs, then you need to expand those programs to accommodate the students that are coming in. One of the issues that comes up, and this kind of leaks over into the boundary analysis issue, is that when you have a school that is larger than 50% farms, you are going to have significant issues in academia, not because a farms student is not a capable learner, but because the issues that lead to poverty can overwhelm the school. For instance, when I taught in Bridgeport, I had a student come in one morning. She had been up all night because a gang had invaded her apartment building and she was hiding under the bed for fear of being assaulted. She was exhausted, sent her down to the nurse to get some sleep. At the end of the day, that it directly impacts her academics, not anything having to do with her ability, but the environment in which she's in. So the boundary analysis is actually a critical factor in resolving or moving forward to resolve some of these issues. But they're very, very complex. And what it comes down to is looking at the systems that are actually in place as to why it is creating such disparity, and how do we modify, create, or disrupt, get rid of systems that are critically creating issues where you have disparate treatment. There is a difference between outright
20
racism
seconds.
and disparate treatment. Disparate treatment has to be measured based on the environment that it's in. It's the only way to identify what's going on with the system is actually look at what's happening. You know, is this individual being treated differently than the other similar situated?
Thank you. Your time is up, sir. So the next question will be for Ms. Slondrowski. And the question is, reading scores among all students subgroups have been on moderate decline for several years in Montgomery County public schools. According to research, once students reach 4th grade, a pivotal change occurs in education where children are no longer learning to read, but they are reading to learn. How can the school district get ahead of the declining performance reading data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
So I will start by saying that the one thing that we do know that has the greatest impact on our students' learning performance is the earliest possible start to their education, and working with children to make sure that they have the skills needed to be successful readers is very, very important. We need to be doing community outreach to make sure that children who aren't even in school yet have reading materials, that they have accessible to them. We need to be making sure that we are utilizing the tools that we have, like the evidence of learning and the different things that Dr. Smith has put into application, like Performance Matters, like so the evidence of learning, and things like that, to really evaluate how every child is doing at as earliest a point as possible, so that then we can make sure that they have the tools that they need to be able to get up to reading on grade level by the 3rd grade, because we do know that that is an indicator of success for long-term reading or lifelong reading success. We need to be making sure that we're testing for things like dyslexia and testing for attention issues or other things that might be hindering a child from being able to be a good, successful reader. And we need to be providing our staff, both our teachers and our support staff, administrators, the professional development, the training that they need in order to be able to support every child in their reading. And then we need to give them enough time, and we need to give every child high expectations and the support and caring that they need in order to develop a true love of reading and love of learning.
Thank you so very much. The next question is for Dr. Dasgupta. Our school system offers separate programs in certain schools, such as highly gifted centers, emerging programs, middle school magnet programs. What one program or service in the county school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? And is there a program or service you would add to ensure the success of all students?
So thank you for that question. I actually want to the one program that I think that needs to be modified, and it really answers two questions you've been asking about reading and about this, is actually the way we teach reading. The way that we have taught reading seems to be a problem. And so right now we have a situation where 50% of our third graders read below grade level, and the numbers are similar across the grades. And the problem is that this is not a new problem, right? Actually, none of the questions you have asked, Reverend Moultrie, with the exception of remote learning, is new. All of them are persistent problems. And so the question to me often is, why are these problems persisting rather than just simply the problem themselves, right? With the specific example of reading, I think a move towards a greater attention to phonics and what is called structured language programs rather than our whole or balanced language programs is a better way forward. And if we can do that, right? Reading is the crux of education. And any school system has to make sure that, that we are teaching reading well, if nothing else. So to me, that is the program that I would really modify and change and bring about. So again, it answers two of your questions, and I really want to actually speak to the persistence of the problem, and I will, I think, hopefully address that in another question.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Ms. Evans. Ms. Evans, we expect all students to perform at high levels. And again, I don't believe that that's consistent throughout our school system. What is your assessment of the current state of how the school system has handled student remote learning? Moving forward, what measures should the school system implement to address potential problems in the future?
Sure, thank you for that question. So we are, as you stated, in a remote learning environment. The system had to quickly pivot from in-person to virtual learning. And what the system also had to do was essentially rethink how we administer teaching, learning, and engaging with our students. And so with that in mind, what we're doing has not been done in public education. Has not been done in public education. So I think that we're, considering the circumstances, we're doing the best that we can do. What we've said to the community is to give us flexibility. We will continue to engage the community and listen to the community and take their feedback and make adjustments along the way. What we have in place during this COVID-19 emergency situation is we have teams that are specifically for our students who are maybe not as engaged as other students would be. And in particular, we can track the attendance to see who is not logging on, to have those student wellness teams to be able to reach out to those families to make certain that they have the supports in place that they need in order to be able to engage in learning. So I'll say that this is really, this is a unique time that we're in, and considering the circumstances, MCPS staff and the board has made decisions that was really supportive of our community, of our families at this time. And what we said that we wanted to do was not to do any harm, but also our focus is on making certain that students are recovering their learning and not losing as much instruction as you can imagine some students may be losing in this virtual environment. Is my time up? No.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, but we're coming right back to you with our next question. Ms. Evans, in light of today's events related to social justice, it has come to light that our students are not taught the full comprehensive story of America. What strategies would you employ to ensure that the district provides a curriculum that is inclusive and representative of our diverse student population?
Thank you for that question. So you did hear earlier that we do have an anti-racist audit currently taking place where it will look at our K through 12 curriculum, as well as the progress our students are making in their learning to make certain that we're doing no harm to our students. And if so, we can take corrective action. I will also say that Ms. Ani, she is the social studies instructional specialist for MCPS, is doing great work in grades 8 and working on grades 9. Currently, we do have, like Black history, various history classes that are in place. But what I will say is that we want to make certain that every student is getting a touch point. And right now in the high school level, some of the courses that can provide more information to our students are electives. And so we don't want our students to elect to get in. We do know that we can create empathy and understanding for our students if every student is getting access to that curriculum where it informs them about the people that are sitting next to them in the classroom. We've heard loud and clear from our students as a result of all the social injustice that you're seeing happening across the country, where they're saying we want to know our history, we want the system to do better. And so we're responding to our students as we should have done prior to now, but we're doing that now, looking into providing more information to educate all of our students on everyone that they're sitting next to in the classrooms, as well as adults in the building as well.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Fryer. And your question is, the goal of district-wide boundary analysis is to help MCPS better understand the impact that existing boundaries have on school overcrowding, student diversity, and student proximity to the school. Redistricting involves a set of complex relationships encompassing facilities usage, transportation, budgeting, and educational programming goals. What is your position on the role of community engagement to support all steps in the change process and the need to address diversity in district-wide boundary analysis?
So one of the interesting things about being a trial attorney is a lot of things don't actually go to trial. A lot of it is mediated. And the rule in mediation is, you know, you have the perfect agreement when every party involved is equally unhappy, because that ensures that no one has an advantage over the others. And the fact is, we have a large number of very disparate voices in Montgomery County pulling in the middle. And what has to happen is whatever the resolution is, has to be slightly unsatisfactory to every party, so everyone is an equal point. The reality is it's got to happen. The figure that I've heard is 60% of students don't attend the school closest to them. Communities are amorphous, they generate, they die, they erupt in other areas. And Montgomery County has very much been a notable representation of that. So you have schools that are overcrowded, we have schools that are undercrowded, and quite frankly, a good boundary analysis can absolutely resolve some of those issues. Now, again, I brought it up before, and that is the 50% farms rate. We don't want any school more than 50% farms, and that is something that can absolutely be addressed with regard to a boundary analysis. We can diversify our population without question. Some of it will be done by a boundary analysis naturally, by just identifying what schools are closest. But I am a huge advocate for public school choice, thematic and magnet schools. So you have programs that are available and you have people that request to go to those programs. There is a certain percentage that will be empty within the building that can be filled with seats in a number of different ways. What's interesting about creating thematic and magnet schools is all of a sudden everyone starts to compete. As those schools become better and more attractive, other schools are forced to become better and more attractive to compete for those student bodies. And suddenly it's not I've got a terrible school, I want to go to a slightly better school. It's got a choice of 4 wonderful schools to attend. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. Now, I've been informed that me holding a card up doesn't work because when he has the question on the screen, you can't see me. So I do have to kind of try to softly interrupt and let you know that you have 20 seconds remaining. So I apologize for that. I'm also going to call an audible and make one more adjustment. You've heard these questions and the context a few times now. So I'm not going to read the context of the questions. I'm just going to read the questions. If you're okay with that, I appreciate that. The next question is to Dr. Dasgupta. And the question is, how would you address the disparities between student subgroups? How would you influence the fair and impartial enrollment of Black and Latino students in accelerated and enriched, gifted, talented instructional programs?
So let me answer this question quickly and then actually address the persistence issue that I was talking about just a minute ago. So first thing is we have to look at resource allocation. The second thing that we have done with magnet programs at the elementary and middle school level is that we've done universal screening. I think we should have universal screening for all our programs that improve the chances of all students getting in. But all equally important is that, a lot of our students are not getting into certain kinds of programs because they're not prepared. Right. So you look at math teams, right? So many middle schools don't have math teams, and math teams are a critical part of how you get into a math science magnet program at the high school. So we don't, and that should be addressed by the resource allocation issue. But I want to go back. Look, the problem of achievement gap, right, has existed in MCPS for decades. Right? In 1996, there was a Harvard study, right, that pointed out the achievement gap. So we are really struggling for a long time to fix this. And so the question to me has been, why? And the answer that I'm coming around to is that there's a structural problem in the way that we do leadership, right? And by and large, if you look at how the board operates, right, the board does not come up with its own policy options, but rather it weighs policy options given to us by the staff, right? But equally, when you talk to the staff, they will tell you that they're waiting for direction from the board. So there needs to be some, I think, way in which we can fix this problem that has been so persistent for so many years, and that is to give the board some staff of its own.
I'm sorry, your time is up. I missed the 22nd mark. I do apologize. The next question is to Mr. Solomon. Your question is, in light of today's events related to social justice, it has come to light that our students are not taught the full comprehensive story of America. What strategies will you employ to ensure that the district provides a curriculum that is inclusive and representative of our student diverse population?
You're already buzzing me. My time can't be up yet, right?
No, it's not up.
I know. Well, I think we all saw this last week, that an astounding amount of children don't know about the Holocaust. And that stat I couldn't believe to be true, but it really was. And I think we don't know these things until we know these things sometimes. So the fact that kids aren't learning about something specific should, and that this many didn't know about the Holocaust should upset parents and teachers and anyone else involved. I think we've done a proactive thing in Montgomery County where the curriculum should be something that is fluid. It should not stay stuck forever in one thing, because history changes, history's added, society changes. We saw this, the board did a good thing by adding the LGBTQ studies program. And the way that we're doing it, I think, is a good way. Make it a pilot-esque program by putting it in a few high schools. See if it's interesting to people. If people want to learn about this thing, that's the thing I'm sure a lot of the children of our fine candidates feel as well. This isn't interesting to me. I don't care about this subject. So find subjects that are interesting to kids, and obviously they'll be more willing to learn about them. But I think that we need to be less structured in our curriculum, not in terms of the macro curriculum, but in terms of parts that can be added to make students aware of different things. So what we did with the LGBTQ program, and what we're going to do, which was just implemented, it hasn't been seen in schools yet, I think is a good idea, because it allows us to teach things that students don't know and enrich their lives, and could be expanded, if it works, to all schools. So I think we should consider more test programs like that in terms of curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Mondrosky. And your question is, how would you address the disparities between student subgroups? How would you influence the fair and impartial enrollment of Black and Latino students in accelerated and enriched, gifted, talented instructional programs?
So thank you for that question. Over the last several years, we've worked really hard to open up the way that we do enrollment in some of our accelerated enriched programs. We have gone from a fully application only process to a general screening, so that kids aren't limited by what their parents are or are not able to put into the effort in getting them into these special programs. We've expanded the criteria for what makes somebody qualified to get into some of the programs. And we've tried very hard to not just expand seats in our independent programs, but also to make sure that we have a very rigorous and accelerated program offerings at every one of our schools. I think that the key to making sure that all of our students are being identified is the fact that we're not just limiting it to one test score or one recommendation from a parent, but we've really tried to target who has the potential to be successful in these programs and take advantage of opportunities that they wouldn't normally be offered. And I just think that that's something that we really need to continue to engage in.
Thank you. The next question is to Ms. Harris. And your question is, how can the school district get ahead of the declining reading performance data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
There's so many ways that the school system needs to adapt our teaching strategies to our 21st century student population. And it will be very interesting to see once we have a more robust and comprehensive plan of pre-K education, making high quality pre-K education available to any and all students free in the county, what that does to our reading data when it gets to those benchmark times when we're looking at grades 3, grades 5, are these students at grade level in their reading? Because right now, students come to us with a mixed bag of preparation when they walk in the door in kindergarten. And some students are clearly very ready and others not as much. And then we see those differences as they march through their early elementary years. And the evidence base is clear that better preparation pre-K is one way to level that playing field and ensure that more students are reading at grade level at those essential benchmark periods. And then we know that, when students are at grade level, then they develop confidence, they move forward, they're more willing to try new things academically and socially, and they are much more liable to take advantage of some of the rigorous opportunities that the school system can provide them when they get older. I think too, we have to double down and take a really close look at how we're teaching reading, especially to our students who are coming to us as, whose primary language at home is not English. Our data has consistently shown us that those students underperform, even when some of our indicators in the classroom show that they are on par with their primary English speaking peers. And we need to be willing to take that data apart in ways that we haven't in the past and really get to the why.
Thank you very much. The next question is to Dr. Dasgupta. And the question is, how can the school district get ahead of the declining reading performance data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
Right. So pre-K, absolutely. I mentioned before the structured versus whole reading, and I think a focus on phonics, a focus on sort of structured reading. Right now, the big dividing line seems to be between 3rd and 4th grade, where they go from reading to learning to read, and to in 4th grade they go to reading to learn. So they are going from sometimes a 10-word sentence to a 30-word sentence from 3rd to 4th grade, right? So that's a big jump, and I think a more structured and a slower approach can work better. There are programs that have worked incredibly well, and some of those programs would help. The trouble is that we have to slow things down a little bit in terms and have a smaller class size, smaller staff ratios to be able to implement those programs, and that is what has held us back. So again, I want to say that the problems with reading is not new. The problems with Black and brown kids being tracked down is not new. The problem with inclusion in curriculum is not new. And so, and the point I was trying to make is that this is an issue that has to do with the structure. It's not about the current board. It's not about the current leadership. This has been happening for, for 10, 20, even long and more years. So I think having staff, at the board having its own staff is very important to getting new options and pushing through policies that actually work.
Thank you very much. So the next question is for Mr. Fryer. What strategies will you employ to ensure the district provides a curriculum that is inclusive and representative of our diverse student population?
So much of education is similar to the reading and the history questions that have already been answered, and I'll get to it when I get them, but is we are going to take a whole bunch of information and we're going to dump it on you, the students. We're going to determine what you want to learn, which is an immediate disengagement for a student. I'm a high school dropout. I mean, I could speak hours on how the public school system failed me. One of the primary issues is that we're going to tell you what you want to learn or what we want you to learn. We don't care what you want to learn. And that was a huge reason for me becoming a teacher and moving into education. A lot of what I've done, which is if you're not engaging the student and finding out what the student wants to learn about, and you're not engaging the student. So it's just this dumping of information down. And we're seeing that. I mean, when a diverse population, it's not one size fits all, education style or content. Your diverse population wants to see themselves in that, and they want to see themselves. They're personally, where's my place? What's my impact on our culture and our country? What do I need? And what do I, in order to move me forward, to inspire me? So unless we're engaging the students, I don't mean putting a group together or a committee of students to pick some stuff. I mean, every individual student in Montgomery County needs to be engaged in their learning. And that means they need to be able to look at information that is important to them. So when you start talking about what curriculum or what pieces can we put together, the most important one is how does the student engage and choose what they want to learn?
I was just letting you know we had 20 seconds, but thank you. The next question, that was Mr. Fryer. The next question is for Ms. Evans. Our school system offers separate programs in what one program or service in the county school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? Is there a program or service you would add to ensure the success of all students?
Thank you for that question. I can think of a lot of things that the school system has done. I'm very committed to equity and creating opportunity and access for our students. And one thing that we've done here in Montgomery County is we have recently opened up our International Baccalaureate program to regional programs at 3 of our high schools, John F. Kennedy High School, Watkins Mill High School, as well as Springbrook High School. A regional program existed at Richard Montgomery High School, but we have thousands of students that apply with not enough seats. So I think it's really great that what Montgomery County is trying to do is expand programs so that not only are they in different parts of the county, but there are an additional seats that are made available to students who have that interest in advancing and having access to rigor. So I could name quite a few others. We have the equal opportunity schools where 18 of our high schools have had the staff there trained specifically to look at the data, to be able to identify students of color who particularly are not participating in advanced programs, to be able to participate, to be able to identify those students. And so we continue to expand and create access for our students to close those gaps in opportunity here in Montgomery County.
Thank you very much. The next question is to Mr. Solomon. How would you address the disparities between student subgroups? How would you influence the fair and impartial enrollment of Black and Latino students in accelerated, gifted, and talented instructional programs?
As was said by, I believe, Sunil and Rebecca before, we've done a good job of making the more universal search for students, that the MCPS doesn't wait for the student to come to them. They go to you to see, are you interested in this? Are you interested in this? And that's really the best way to do it, because that's how you find people who are more interested in these things. I've also learned that from my experience, when I was in school, it was called honors classes back then. There was tremendous amount of work involved in certain honors classes that really dissuaded me from wanting to take them. These were incredibly rigorous, and maybe I wasn't cut out for it or something. But I found that that the balance between amounts of special programs for any child and any parent is the decision they have to make. Yes, we all want our children to take the hardest and best classes, to learn the most in school and do the best in life. But the overwhelming of kids sometimes is something I don't think we take for granted. I see it with my nephew now, who's 14, and he's in his district, they call it AP classes, and it's really overwhelming. So I think we have to be very careful about how much overwhelming we do of students in these programs, but the real way of doing it is finding the kids' interests and finding them instead of them happening on the program. Because if we don't do the universal searching, kids will never find the special programs, and we'll never find better ways to learn about these things. So I think that's the key thing, and they've done it. So not all these things are things we haven't done right. Some things we are doing right and have to continue to keep doing them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Ms. Smondrowski. Tell me I'm saying your name correctly.
Yep, close enough. Smondrowski.
Okay, thank you. How can the school district get ahead of the declining reading performance data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
So I answered that question the last time. Do you want me to do it again? Or a different one?
I'm sorry, you certainly did.
Okay.
Let me give you a different question.
Okay.
What is your assessment of the current state of how the school system has handled student remote learning? Moving forward, what measures should the school system implement to address potential problems in the future?
So as far as assessing the current state of how the school system has handled remote learning, it was a very unprecedented, challenging situation. I think that the school system has worked hard to ensure that everybody has one-to-one devices, and that we've been trying to provide professional development for our teachers in order to be supportive, and our support staff in order to support student learning. But ultimately, the fact of the matter is our kids need to be in school, and they need to have that in-person exchange. They need to be able to engage with one another and get to know their teachers. So we need to continue to make sure that we can come up with a plan to appropriately and safely get students back to school. And I apologize for the noise. We're doing a little construction, so I just want to apologize for that. But I think that as far as setting us up for the future, one of the things that I've kind of been excited about is the opportunities that this has potentially opened up for us for going forward. I've been a longtime advocate of making sure that we had one-to-one devices for our students and our staff. I've been a longtime advocate of opening up access and opportunities for all students to participate in any class that they are interested in via virtual learning. I believe that we should be looking at things like having virtual teachers who can teach a course, and anybody at any school who wants to participate could potentially sign up for that class and take that opportunity. I've been working with the Black and Brown Coalition on those efforts. And I think that we just need to keep making sure that we figure out how to support our students, both with the technology aspect of it and the platforms. We really need to keep a strong look at the platforms that we're utilizing, and both for the ease and accessibility for those.
Thank you very much. The next question to Ms. Harris. The question is, what one program or service in the county school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? And is there a program or service you would add to ensure the success of all students?
I would echo some of the sentiments some of my colleagues here have spoken to earlier, in that, you know, as a school system, one of the things that we, I think, have to try to move away from, and it's incredibly difficult when you're the 13th largest school system in the country, is cookie cutter approaches to teaching and instruction and cookie cutter measures of achievement. And if it's hard, if we're trying to adapt our learning and scaffold our classroom approaches to meet the needs of individual learners, especially now, it's hard to make a broad sweeping claim that this, that, or the other program needs to go because it's not serving students well. I think one of the things that I would really like to see us do, building on some of the other comments we've heard here, is that now that we have been forced into a distance learning model, and we've been forced to try to develop really engaging teaching and learning tools for our teachers to use and our students to use and learn from, let's take what we're learning now and let's apply that into serving students better and meeting their unique learning needs better in ways that aren't going to cost the system any more money, because I think we're moving into what is probably going to be a budget crisis. So if we've learned now that some students actually thrive better with a distance learning model, let's see what we can do to make robust learning available no matter what school you're going to, in a learning milieu that best meets your needs, instead of saying what program should we get rid of and what program should we add. Let's look at doing what we can with what we have better.
I'm sorry, your time is up. The next question is for Ms. Evans. What is your position on the role of community engagement to support all steps in the change process and the need to address diversity in the district-wide boundary analysis?
As a current member on the board, serving as the president, I supported having the boundary analysis done for our school district. What I will say is that the board has made every effort to try to engage all the community, regardless of their perspectives. This is probably one of the times where we engage with the community. I believe we had over 100 meetings, and we tried to reach the hard to reach parents, to have the discussion, to engage them in the conversation. I believe that we always, as a board, as a school system, we need to look at how we're allocating our resources, and our students can definitely benefit from being in diverse settings. So fully supported the district-wide analysis, always support engaging our community in conversation. That's a large part of what we do. Regardless of people's perspectives, we want to hear what all of our community has to say and engage them. We're all about community participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is for Mr. Fryer. And your question is, what is your assessment of the current state of how the school system has handled student remote learning? Moving forward, what measures should the school system implement to address potential problems in the future?
So one thing that really drives teachers crazy is someone who says, well, I'm comfortable speaking in front of a group of people, so I'm a teacher. It really kind of flies in the face of the training, the background, the education, and everything that the teacher has gone through to achieve that post. With that in mind, that's a specific skill set. And asking a classroom teacher to suddenly teach online is the equivalent of saying to a civil engineer, oh, we need you to do electrical engineering. Sure, engineering is in the title of both, but it doesn't mean you can do both disciplines. I think classroom teachers have had a very, very sudden shock about how different it is to approach teaching and curriculum live and in person, and being able to work with a student, and then suddenly being remote and removed from the students and having to really rethink, how do you approach a lesson? How do you engage a student? Again, I've got a large background in train the trainers and doing distance learning and a number of other things. So quite frankly, a lot of times I can't go into my kids' room while they're in class. It's kind of painful to me. That said, it's done it's stunning. It's a major miracle that Montgomery County, a system so large, was able to pivot so quickly and accommodate students as much as they did. It's been amazing to me watching it as it's been rolled out, as devices have gotten to kids, as the curriculum's been built, as materials have come home. There is no way to say thank you to every person that's been involved, from the IT staff who had to, engineer and arrange this, to the teachers who have had to implement it, to staff and administration who have been on the ground passing out books, who are there in the schools making sure that kids get fed. It's been incredible. So can we nitpick and say, this isn't effective or that's not effective? Absolutely. I could spend 6 hours going on how it's not implemented correctly and how it could be done better. But the reality is that the system was not designed and executed purposefully. The system was a reaction to a crisis. And when we look at it through that lens, it's amazing what's been
done. Time has expired. Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Dasgupta. The question is, what strategies will you employ to ensure the district provides a curriculum that is inclusive and representative of our diverse student population?
So just a couple of days ago, I got a message from a parent of a new kindergarten child about the new benchmark reading materials that the family had received. And the family is Asian American. And so one of the pages there showed a blonde, blue-eyed white kid welcoming a Asian girl dressed in very sort of traditional Asian clothes, saying "Welcome to America," or words to that effect. And so the parent, who is Asian American, and the child, has an Asian American child, said to me, "This is not acceptable." And I think I agree. There is so many cases of this, and this is a new curriculum, so it's not like it happened. It's in the past. So to me, a big part of this is the study especially the study of history, right? And in the study of history, by and large, we don't have state standards for that. The study of history is determined, is backward engineered from what I would say is the AP US History course, which my son took last year. And I followed along with him a little bit, as much as I could. And I think that curriculum really could do with a big change. And here is my recommendation. I think we should have the People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn as our the instrument that the book that we use to teach history, and then work backwards throughout our social science curriculum, integrating that. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. The next question, Ms. Harris. What is your assessment of the current state of how the school system has handled student remote learning? Moving forward, what measures should the school system implement to address potential problems in the future?
Thank you. Great question. And I can speak to that as both a parent and a teacher. I think that MCPS has done a great job of trying to ensure that everybody has the tools and technology they need to engage. I think I appreciated the design teams that were formed up over the summer, incorporating stakeholder groups in them to look at multiple areas of work that go into putting together a learning plan for the fall semester. So there was engagement. I don't think there was enough student engagement in those groups. And I would say I also appreciated the system's continued emphasis on teachers just focusing on connecting with their students, making sure their students are okay, and easing into the fall semester with a week of that sort of relationship building and just checking in. I think as a CTE instructor, I would say I would like the school system to move much more rapidly with some of the proposals that we've put forward to bring small cohorts of students in for in-person instruction. We put together a CDC compliant plus plan that's adaptable to any purpose we would want to bring cohorts of students into our buildings. For some of us, CTE, some of our special needs learners, some of our ESOL programs, that bit of in-person instruction I think is essential to continuing students moving forward in progress. I can't deliver the end goal of my program if I can't get my students in for some in-person patient care skills training in my skills lab. So it's time. I think MSD has spoken clearly. They want our school systems to be looking at in-person instruction safely. And I'd like to see us move forward much more quickly.
Thank you very much. Next question, Ms. Smondrowski. What is your position on the role of community engagement to support all steps in the change process and the need to address diversity in the district-wide boundary analysis?
So first, I want to start by saying that I think it's both appropriate and responsible to frequently review how our facilities are utilized, their diversity, and the temperature of the school climate within each building. I think that we should use the data analysis along with our 4 criteria factors while considering utilization of our schools during boundary studies and determining where we might potentially put elective programs, and even looking at past redistricting actions where they might not be applicable anymore. Diverse schools with an engaged community are essential to our students' successes. Geographic proximity and travel time are key factors that are important to our families when accessing education and programming and connecting with our school. But ultimately, my job is to make sure that regardless of whatever the catchment area is, every school is one that all children can be proud to attend and that staff are eager to teach in, and the community can be connected with, and that every student receives an excellent education. As far as community involvement goes, that is something that has always been very, very important to me and to us as a board. And as was mentioned, we did do a lot of community outreach on this, but communication and transparency are very key to the success of any relationship. Frequent, honest dialogue and engagement are essential for all stakeholders. While the Board of Education is an extension of the community and serves as a voice for the residents, and we must act in the best interest of all of our students, we did try to reach out to the community. However, I believe that unfortunately, we did not go back out when changes were made to the policy FAA for the final time. And I think that not having done so has caused a lot of mistrust and mistrust of our subsequent actions as a board on this issue. I'm hopeful that we can, with time, continue to correct that, but it's definitely going to take a lot more communication and a lot more listening and a lot more outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Mr. Solomon. What one program or service in the county school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? Is there a program or service you would add or to ensure the success of all students?
We're going to have to make a lot of decisions to cut a lot of programs, sadly. No one wants to say that. Definitely none of us want to say that. No one wants to hear it. But in the post-COVID budgets, things are going to have to be cut. And when I saw the budgets that were proposed by for MCPS and for countywide this year, I was surprised. I was surprised that they're not more forward thinking and being like, we can't keep spending this amount of money based on projections. Look at how many businesses have closed in the county. I lost my job and I finally just got it back. So millions of us across the country were unemployed and several still are. So I think the lack of forethought on a budgetary level is really what is going to not doom us, but really be a problem in the future. So there's no individual program that I would cut or add specifically, but I really think that more forward thinking in terms of preparing a budget now, not even in just a CIP 6-year kind of plan, but year by year is very critical and something that, if elected, I would be hands-on in an audit of how we're spending money and how we're going to need to cut that money. And no one wants to tell any parent, we got to cut this program. We can't afford it. Our county's not is where we thought it would be. So that's something we're going to have to do. And I just hopefully I'll be elected and can do it myself and see what we'll need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Solomon, I'm going to come right back to you with your last question. How can the school district get ahead of the declining reading performance data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
Well, when I was in school, we had summer reading, and I know MCPS still has summer reading recommendations, but at my school, they did extra credit for that first semester when you wrote a report about your summer reading books. I thought that was a great idea. It made me get off my butt, read that book and write a report about it. So I think we really need to offer things like that for more kids that you have to read over the summer. And our libraries are a great resource that a lot of kids, I don't think, utilize well enough. We've done a great job here in the county with 22 wonderful libraries. They have every book you can imagine. They've really tried to adapt and be a 21st century kind of library. I spent a lot of time at the library growing up. I think it benefited my reading and abilities. And I think it can for students right now as well. I obviously, universal pre-K is something that once you won't be as the third grade level stat we mentioned earlier with universal pre-K, that would fix a lot of those things as well. And of course, teacher and parent involvement is very key to reading. Teachers need to communicate with parents. Parents need to communicate with kids, and it takes a village to get a child to read at the level that they should be. So it really is much more involvement on all aspects to make this something that is very sad that so many kids are not being able to read at levels that they should be. So it's a multifaceted thing that I think we can do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mondrowski, your last question is, what one program or service in the county school budget do you feel should be eliminated or modified, and why? Is there a program or service you would add to ensure the success of all students?
So thank you for that question. This is something that, obviously all of my colleagues here have answered, but, one of the things that's really been important to me in my entire tenure on the board has been really looking at the return on our investments and making sure that we are offering what kids need. As has been mentioned, engagement is critical for success for our students. It was a challenge for me to keep my son in school, which was a big part of what got me involved in the activism that I've participated in on these efforts. Some things that I've done with, over the last several years, working with our superintendent and MCPS staff, have been reworking and expanding alternative programs, trying to make that an opportunity where students can make it an opt-in. It's an opt-in program, so that if you just need a different way of learning, or the virtual learning is working best for you, you can now do that. You can participate in this program, go to a building and work with other students or on your own individually, or whatever you need. You have the resources there, and it's different from our comprehensive high schools. We've expanded these career technology educational programs and career pathway opportunities tremendously, which I'm very, very proud of. Worked very directly with the police and firefighters to start grow our own first responders programs, trying to create opportunities to grow our own teachers workforce. And we've opened a recovery school for children students who are coming out of substance abuse and dealing with substance abuse recovery issues. So again, that they have an opportunity to attend school somewhere other than at the comprehensive high school. I think that we need to continue to look at that, but we've got to always be mindful of what's working for our children. And if it's not growing, and if it's not doing more for our students, then that's where we start to have the conversations about eliminating anything.
Thank you very much. Ms. Harris, your last question. What is your position on the role of community engagement to support all steps in the change process and the need to address diversity in the district-wide boundary analysis?
Yeah, I'm a firm and strong believer in community engagement because in my 12 years of advocating in the school system, have come to realize that our county is rich in passion and knowledge and expertise and all manner of issues that can enrich our school system. And as a system, we have not always been as welcoming to the input of community in our decision making around our schools. And every one of our 208 schools is different and unique, and has there are unique ways that each community knows it can best support its students and teachers, and we don't make that possible for them. And as has been alluded to earlier, we have had a problem with transparent decision making and making people feel that they truly understand what we're doing and why. And those things are absolutely essential to building trust. I think an ongoing regular process of assessing our boundaries is essential to making sure that we are using our resources as best we can, eliminating over and under capacity issues in our schools, and doing our best to ensure that our schools are truly diverse, and that we have a system of diverse schools and not just a diverse school system. I think, though, we have had we've come to a time when some of the loudest voices have been those who have been most interested in protecting their privilege instead of looking out for the interests of all of our diverse 166,000 students. And the Board of Education and the school system must engage. We have to communicate in an ongoing and comprehensive way and in an open and transparent way with our communities, but we also have to have a strong compass for what we stand for as a school system, and we have to be committed to moving in the direction of creating truly equitable opportunities and truly excellent opportunities for every student, regardless of zip code, regardless of what school they're assigned to. And that has to be our guiding principle.
The next question, Dr. Dasgupta, your last question is, what is your assessment of the current state of how the school system has handled student remote learning? Moving forward, what measures should the school system implement to address potential problems in the future?
So the first thing is that many students have adapted and adjusted to virtual learning quite well. But there are thousands, tens of thousands of students that have not. And I want to address in particular the problem with those other students that have not adjusted. So to me, the biggest issue is that coming in with a fall plan 5 days before the school was about to reopen this on August 31st was a decision too late. We should have decided much earlier about how we were going to go and given teachers the time to adapt, to learn, and to train. That did not happen, unfortunately. I met a first grade teacher recently on the street. For the first time, I didn't know her. I was just walking the dog. And she almost started crying right there in the street, because she said she was stressed that she was being asked to do too much and she couldn't do it. Her students, some of them were hard to engage. And this is somebody who's had 20 years of experience. So going forward, I think we ought to really involve teachers in the planning process and take into account what they want. I have taught online for 7 years, and I know that online teaching is vastly different from in-person teaching, right? And that vast difference implies retraining and getting ready. And now we have to start preparing for the eventual reopening of our buildings. I am not seeing signs of serious planning on that, and I don't want to wait for a long time before we do that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fryer, your last question. How can the school district get ahead of the declining reading performance data to ensure that all students are set up for lifelong reading success?
So I'm going to answer this. I was hoping to get the history question too. So I'm going to do both at the same time. We've been here at this point in history. Little education history real quick. There was a point in time where we said, oh, we've got history and all we're really doing is arbitrary people out of the past, and we're making memorize a whole bunch of the facts and figures and dates. That's no good. you end up with a population. I think the recent statistic is a third of the population can't name all three branches of government, and a fifth can't name one of them. So when you really focus just on driving facts and figures, you create a problem. And that's how the social studies curriculum was created. That's actually where it comes from, where you said, well, let's look at actual social systems and cultures and other things. Reading went through the same transformation. There is a difference between decoding and reading. Decoding is where you look at a word on a page, you identify the letters, and you say, oh, M-O-U-N-T, that's Mount, I've decoded. It's not reading. For the older folks, remember basal readers. You're seeing them again with the kids coming through. They're short excerpts, reading pieces, bits, because we test every 3 or 4 weeks. And what you can't do is you can't test reading. You can only test on decoding. So we have cycled fully back into decoding again. So what we don't have is we're not teaching a passion for reading. We're not teaching that want to read. As a teacher, I actually had a parent come in very concerned about their students reading and said, I don't understand, you're teaching reading. I taught whole language, which was the antithesis to what is being taught now and what is being used now. It's 20 years ago. But they're not reading. What's going on? I'm saying, well, one of the most important things you can do is model at home. What are you reading as a parent? Oh, I haven't read anything since I left high school. I don't read. And that's the problem. We're getting to fourth grade, but we're not encouraging passion for reading. We're not encouraging kids to really find what they want to do. We're not talking about character development and emotional choice and things that really engage a reader. We're sitting them down and saying, read these 10 words and make sure you can pronounce them correctly, because we're testing you on this, in 2 weeks, and you got to pass that.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
The last question is, Ms. Evans. How would you address the disparities between student subgroups? How would you influence the fair and impartial enrollment of Black and Latino students in accelerated, enriched, gifted, and talented instructional programs?
Sure. Montgomery County Public Schools had met its associates do a audit on their choice program and special programs. And what came out of that was there was a scarcity of seats, and we needed to create more seats for our students. And so that's what MCPS has been working to do. And in addition, students have been identified in their own school. So there are a cohort of students that have the ability to access enriched studies. Then that cohort is created at their schools. What we want to be able to do is ensure that students don't have to go to a special school, but they can right there at their own school, if they have the number of students available, learn right there. And so I know people may assume, because I am on the school board, that my students get access to opportunities. I had a student apply to a special program and she did not get into that program. So it just goes to show you the importance of trying to create more access and opportunities for our students. And that's what we're doing here in Montgomery County. And I'm proud of that work to ensure that students can participate.
Thank you so very much for that answer. I do appreciate all of your answers and the time that you've sacrificed to be with us today. We're going to give each of you 1 minute. And I apologize, I wanted to give you more, but time has gotten away from us. We're going to give each of you 1 minute to give your final wrap up comments, and then we'll dismiss. So we'll start with you, Ms. Evans, since you are right there.
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll just say, we'll hear this time and time again. This pandemic has really changed the way we have been educating our students. MCPS has had to pivot from in-person instruction to virtual learning. We were able, and me as a board member was able to work with the school system as the current president and leader to help face that challenge. In a time such as this, we need leaders with a proven track record and a strong commitment to equity. I am that person. Please go out and vote on November the 3rd. I am Shebra Evans, running for District 4 seat for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Mr. Fryer, 1 minute.
Thank you. And thank you again. If you've made it through the 2 hours, God bless you. You are clearly interested in what we have to say and Montgomery County and the Board of Education, and that's appreciated. Again, I'm a 30-year veteran. I was a school teacher, social worker for child support services. I am an attorney who represented children and families in education and other matters. This is my passion. In case you can't tell from the way I approach the subject, I do and still do a lot of reading and, quite frankly, a lot of education on my own to keep up and abreast of what's going on, particularly since I do have 2 kids that are in MCPS. This is not a lifelong goal to serve on the Board of Education. Quite frankly, I was looking at retiring. But I think it's critical based on my background, my experience coming out of the things that I've done, particularly in Connecticut, to help Montgomery County, particularly the issues that they're facing. Are they unique? Yes, because Montgomery County is its own system. But are the issues themselves unique? No. Unfortunately, they're faced around the country. And there are various solutions that have been proposed. Some have worked very
Your time is up, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Dasgupta.
Well, thank you, Reverend Moultrie, Ms. Powell, Mount Calvary, Lincoln Park Historical Association. My name is Sunil Dasgupta, and I'm running for the Montgomery County Board of Education in November 2020. I'm asking for your vote and support because I believe our education system is today at a crossroads, and I have the experience, knowledge, network, coalition, and the values to help steady the ship. I will be an independent voice, and I will bring the county together. The first priority of any school leader is to improve learning outcomes, and I hope to do that. If you, like me, believe that we need to stand up for public education and equal access today, please consider voting for me, Sunil Dasgupta. If you want to learn more, please go to sunildasgupta.com. Thank you. Please stay safe.
Thank you very much. Mr. Solomon.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Moultrie. Thank you, Ms. Powell. It's always great to be asked about things you're going to do if you're elected. Who are these people? Why should we vote for them? So why should you vote for me? I'm Steve Solomon, running for District 4 Board of Education. I don't have the vast experience that a lot of my colleagues here have. I'm just a guy who wants to do a little good and make a difference in the county I've lived in my whole life. So that's who I am. I see a few problems, some real issues that I think can be fixed with a few solutions, like retaining our best teachers, like providing more vocational programs for kids, something I learned out of high school that really benefited me, and encouraging more teacher mentorship. We have a great county. We do have our problems. If you look, we have food shortages in Montgomery County. Ask the people at Nourish Now. It's very troubling. So I think if I'm elected to the board, I can do some things that will actually affect people's lives and for the better. So I'm not trying to change the world. I'm just trying to do a little bit better here in Montgomery County. Thank you.
So, Ms. Smondrowski.
So I just want to say thank you very much for all of you who put this together and for everybody who joined us. I've been proud to represent our students, staff, and families here in Montgomery County on the Board of Education, and I look forward to continuing that work going forward. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so very much. And last but not least, Ms. Harris.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have to say, when I initially filed to run for the Board of Ed, I did it because after 12 years of advocating in the school system, 12 years of being a parent in the school system, and at that time, 4.5 years of being a teacher in the school system, I had a very wide and deep knowledge of the school system and a great appreciation for the unique wisdom of our families, of our students, of our teachers, and how every one of those groups can bring so much to the table when it comes to making the best decisions we possibly can for us students in our schools, and knowing that without collaborating with all of those groups and truly and substantively bringing all of them to the decision-making table, we are not making the best decisions we can. But now, as we're coming through this moment, I so much want to work alongside our students and our teachers and our advocates to create a truly anti-racist and truly equitable school system. And I want to bring my background and training as a lawyer, as a nurse, as a public professional.
Thank you.
Every day.
Your time has expired and our time is up. We really, really appreciate each and every one of you. We wish you all the best. We have on this forum have had as many as 150 30 viewers. And we know that over the coming weeks, there will be many more. So we pray that this serves you well in your efforts to do the good work for Montgomery County Public Schools. Thank you. Be safe. God bless you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Jordan Lindsay with Montgomery Community Media. I have Dr. Gilberto Zelaya joining me from the Montgomery County Board of Elections. What are some things that Montgomery County residents should know when it comes to the general election in November?
So the big difference between the primary and the general election, beyond the date, obviously, that it's November 3rd, is that the Maryland State Board of Elections will mail every single registered voter a vote by mail, known formally as absentee ballot application. So you can receive your ballot at home, but you have to actively request this ballot to be mailed. Montgomery County highly recommends that voters don't wait until the State Board of Elections mails the vote by mail application. You could do that today. And it
Hi, I'm Jordan Lindsay with Montgomery Community Media. I have Dr. Gilberto Zelaya joining me from the Montgomery County Board of Elections. What are some things that Montgomery County residents should know when it comes to the general election in November?
So the big difference between the primary and the general election, beyond the date, obviously, that it's November 3rd, is that the Maryland State Board of Elections will mail every single registered voter a vote by mail, known formally as absentee ballot application. So you can receive your ballot at home, but you have to actively request this ballot to be mailed. Montgomery County highly recommends that voters don't wait until the State Board of Elections mails the vote by mail application. You could do that today. And it actually helps our staff to process this request as opposed to being inundated with, let's say, 500,000 requests to vote by mail in October. Please don't procrastinate. Apply today. You could text the letters VBM for vote by mail, VBM to 77788, or you could visit us on our website at 777vote.org, or you could give us a call at 240-777-8550, and we'll gladly help you get an application so you could vote by mail November 3rd. So the one thing we also encourage individuals is to register to vote. The voter registration deadline is Tuesday, October 13th.
Hogan said the upcoming election will be an all of the above election with the most choices possible. Can you maybe explain that to our viewers, what that could mean?
So what Hogan meant basically is it's going to be a somewhat normal elections as in year past. We will have precinct level election day voting locations. We will have early voting sites. Montgomery County has 11, and individuals could vote by mail. But the problem and the challenges we're having right now is we're having a challenge identifying civic-minded individuals to serve as election poll workers November 3rd and during early voting. What does that mean to the voters? We're looking to consolidate precincts. So if you're accustomed to going to X location, let's say I vote at Hallie Wells, I live in Clarksburg, my polling place might move to Clarksburg High School. And if you, let's say, if I voted in Clarksburg High School, there's a high possibility that they're going to merge neighboring precincts or locations into a particular polling place. So that's going to cause long lines. In addition, there's two ways you could vote by mail: the traditional cardstock official ballot or request a web delivery ballot. We highly recommend you vote the official because then we don't have to transcribe and duplicate that ballot. It's much quicker because web delivery, you have to use your paper, your envelope, you pay postage, and you have to print your ballot. Using the official, we cover all the expenses, we give you all the instructions and the ballot, and postage is paid. It's so much easier, it's very convenient and safe.
There's false claims or alleged false claims that the Postal Service is asking people to send their vote by mail ballots in at least 2 weeks, give it a 2-week time frame or something of that sort. Mm-hmm. Can you address these claims and set the record straight?
Yeah, so we've been seeing that as well as circulating in social media. By all means, voting is secure, the post office is intact, but keep in mind, if you have any concerns, the second you receive your vote by mail ballot, once you request it, we're going to have official Montgomery County Board of Election designated ballot drop boxes across the county. So if you have concerns with that round trip of your ballots getting back to the Board of Elections, just drive to one of our designated ballot drop boxes. We will be promoting that in the near weeks. So by all means, once you get your ballot, if you voted, deposit it in one of the sanctioned ballot drop boxes. And so you know, we will have bipartisan teams of staff emptying out those ballot boxes across Montgomery County twice a day and on Sunday. So the post office is closed on Sunday. We'll be working throughout the election process in the season. So by all means, use the ballot drop box if you have any concerns, but the post office is intact. We are in need of election poll workers. We would love for individuals to serve in said capacity. We are actually, the stipend, we have increased it to up to $310 or 25 student service learning hours per day.
Thank you, Dr. Zelaya. And this is Jordan Lindsay reporting for MyMC Media.
say yes. I don't have your picture.
Good evening.
Unclick your video.
Do we have everyone in?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Reverend.
You want to mute yourself?
Good evening.
Okay, we do have everyone. Good evening, and we're so grateful to have you with us here today. Give me just a moment to reorganize here and now we welcome you and thank you for joining us for this candidate forum. I'm Reverend Barry Moultrie, your host for this evening. Mount Calvary Baptist Church, in partnership with the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation, are sponsoring this forum to provide as much insight and perspective as we can to the voting public, specifically in two categories, the candidates for Board of Education, which we've just completed, and now the candidates for Circuit Court judges. Let me be clear, neither myself, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, Ms. Anita Neal Powell, nor the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation are endorsing, supporting, or promoting any specific candidate for any office. We are adamantly and aggressively encouraging every eligible and able-bodied person to vote and exercise their right to vote. And in addition to voting, we want everyone to be clear about their candidates of choice and why these are your candidates of choice. Our first session this evening was with the Board of Education. Now we're with you, the Circuit Court judges, and joining us for this forum is Judge B.B. Berry, Judge Christopher Fogelman, Mr. Thomas Johnson, Judge Michael McAuliffe, Miss Marilyn Pierre, and Judge Boynton did contact me and apologize that he has a previous commitment and he could not cancel that, but he would really prefer to be here. Let me remind you all that this is a question and answer forum, not a debate. All responses should be addressed to me and not to other candidates. We have a series of prepared and vetted questions, and we hope to have other questions submitted by the viewing audience. We're streaming this forum this evening on our Mount Calvary Baptist Church Rockville YouTube channel. We're monitoring the chat on that channel and invite any viewers to submit questions through the chat function. We will only ask questions that we can ask each candidate. Therefore, if your question is for an individual candidate, we will not be asking that question in this setting. I know I don't need to say this, but I will for the sake of clarity. Aggressive attacks will not be allowed or tolerated. So we ask that you be mindful of your words and their impact. We do want you to be expressive because we are giving an opportunity to allow our constituents to know who you are and gain insight and perspective into who they will potentially be putting in office. We do also ask that you represent yourselves well in this forum. While we are aware of voting blocks, teams, and partnerships, we will not allow any proxy representation of those who are not participating in our forum. As we begin, we will give each candidate 90 seconds to introduce themselves. While we know that you're all learned and have many degrees, your education is important, but we implore you to share with the audience why you are running for this office and why you should be their candidate of choice. Questions will be asked on a rotating basis. And our responses will be timed. For each question, you will be allotted a specific amount of time that we deem sufficient to respond to that question. We do ask that you honor that time limit so that we can fairly and equally hear from each of you. I will be monitoring time and will let you know when you have about 15 to 20 seconds remaining on your time. When your time is up, you will be notified, and if you continue, I'll have no choice but to mute your microphone. I won't use other candidates' time apologizing for muting you, so let me do that right now. For each and every one of you, I apologize if I have to mute you, but trust and believe I will do that. At the end, you will each be given an equal amount of time for any closing statements, wrap up, or comments. As we approach the end of your time, 15, 20 seconds remaining, I will hold up an index card that will be the signal to you that your time is running out. And the next you hear from me, I will be saying your time is running out as I am pushing the mute button. So there we are. We are going to start off now and ask in the same order that I just introduced everyone, because that's alphabetical, that you take 90 seconds. Let me get my trusted timer set up.
What is mine?
That you take 90 seconds and introduce yourself. And we will start with Judge Bibi Berry.
Thank you so much, Reverend Moultrie. Good evening to everyone. My name is Judge Bibi Berry. I have been on the bench for 3 years. I was appointed in 2017 to be a family magistrate after an application and interview process. And ultimately, I was chosen by the judges of the circuit court to sit. Then in 2019, after a much more intense and robust application and vetting process, I was appointed to be a judge. I was born and raised in DC, the Brooklyn area in Northeast DC. I went to Howard University. I'm a proud mother of a recent Howard University grad. I went to Georgetown University Law Center. I went to school at night. I was a single parent, as I was throughout my entire career, and I worked full-time during the day. I made Montgomery County my home in 2005, and I've lived here ever since. I love this county. I am honored to serve this community, and I'd like to keep doing it. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to answering any questions you have.
Thank you, Judge Fogelman.
Thank you, Reverend Moultrie, and good evening, everyone. It's my hope that tonight I can share with you a little bit about me as a person. You can learn about my legal qualifications on our website or simply by Googling me. I was a trial lawyer for 30 years, and during that time, I tried some of the most difficult and serious criminal and civil cases. I gave up a successful law practice and was honored to be appointed to the circuit court bench. I did this because I believed that I could actually make a difference in people's lives, and I wanted the opportunity to do that. I saw a need in Montgomery County where I live, and my wife and I have raised our 5 children. During that time, I've been very active in the community in a number of ways, including youth sports coaching for 27 years, and being an active participant on the Montgomery County Juvenile Justice Commission. In the short time that we have tonight, I hope to show you that you would want to decide important family, criminal, and civil disputes. I hope that you'll see why I was appointed and why I should be retained as a circuit court judge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will ask that while you're not speaking, that you mute your microphones out of deference to the other candidates. Next, Mr. Thomas Johnson.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Reverend Moultrie and Mount Calvary Baptist Church, Ms. Paul, and all in attendance this evening. My name is Thomas P. Johnson III. I will not be on the ballot in November. I'm a write-in candidate, meaning that you will have to write my name on the ballot. During the primary, my self-funded campaign was limited to 6 weeks due to the pandemic. I still received 52,421 votes. True campaigning opportunities were limited, so I have decided to continue my campaign for judge. I'm a solo practitioner, have been practicing law since 1993, have lived in the county since 1995, got my start working for the poor in New Orleans at Legal Aid. I have practiced law in administrative, federal, and state court proceeding. Should I be elected, I will be the first Black male judge to sit on the circuit court in 6 years. I'm asking you for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm going to just take a moment. Who is Reno Pierre?
That's me.
Who is me?
Oh, Reynolds. Am I not supposed to be here?
No, you're not supposed to be here. I'm sorry.
Okay. I will drop off. I
Thank you
apologize.
very much. Okay, thank you. Chris, let's make sure the waiting room is and we don't let anybody else in. Thank you. Okay, I apologize. Next, Judge Michael McAuliffe.
Good evening. I'm Judge Mike McAuliffe of the Circuit Court for Montgomery County. By way of introduction, I have lived in Rockville and Silver Spring since I was a child. I attended Montgomery County Public School and then Good Counsel High School in Wheaton. My wife and I have raised our 3 children here in Silver Spring. I've been a practicing trial lawyer since 1987. Before I became a judge, I tried hundreds of cases to juries and judges in our courts. Everything from civil rights cases to medical malpractice cases, from child custody cases to homicides. I did all those things to judges and juries in hundreds of cases. Sometimes I was paid, sometimes it was pro bono. But people came to me in the worst moments of their lives. They trusted me because they knew I listened. That's why I became a judge, because people trust me to listen. We went through a very thorough vetting process that you heard Judge Barry mention, and we'll hear more about that tonight to explain how you become a judge, how we became judges through the merit system. By this enormous vetting, everybody has so many chances to investigate our qualifications. And I think you'll find at the end of this that these people, the 3 sitting judges that are here with you tonight, and Judge Boynton, who can't be here, are the most qualified for this position. Thank you.
Okay, let me just remind you that we want you to just address you and your qualifications and your responses. We do appreciate that Judge Boynton can't be here, but we really want the candidate, the voters to know who you are.
Understand. Thank you, Reverend.
Next, Miss Marilyn Pierre.
Thank you to Mount Calvary Baptist Church and the Lincoln Park Foundation for sponsoring this forum. And thank you, Reverend Moultrie, for moderating it. My name is Mary Lynn Pierre. I am a candidate for Montgomery County Circuit Court Judge, and I respectfully ask for your vote. I went to Howard University School of Law because that is where Thurgood Marshall, my role model, went to law school. I have been representing clients in civil and criminal law cases for over 28 years. I am a former chair of the Montgomery County Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission and a former legal redress attorney for the NAACP Montgomery County branch. I am a wife, mother, veteran, a former president of a bar association, and an immigrant. A judge's job is to be a problem solver. My broad range of legal and life experiences have given me excellent problem-solving skills and prepared me very well to serve as a judge. I am hoping that you will give me the opportunity. Please vote for me, Marilyn Pierre, for judge. Please vote Marilyn for Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we will go right into the questions, and I'm going to read the question, and then we will allow each of you in turn an opportunity to answer the first question. Then when we go to the second question, we will change the order so that a different person is answering first and each time around. Okay? The first question, and with each question, there is a little bit of context so that we can frame this for you. The first question, you will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. And as you might imagine, the recent deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and others have led to protests by groups such as Black Lives Matter. Some individuals, including elected officials, have labeled Black Lives Matter as a hate group similar to many other groups out there. How do you ensure that your decisions that may affect members or supporters of Black Lives Matter are non-political in any environment where nonpartisanship and divisiveness invade every aspect of our society? The first person up is Judge Barry.
So I think that any folks that come before us have to expect that we are going to be fair and impartial in any decision that we make. I don't anticipate that, at least in the family rotation where I am, the fact that someone is a protester in the Black Lives Matter movement is going to come up. But if it does, it certainly isn't going to affect my decision making. Everyone has a right to protest. I support that right to protest. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter whether a judge supports the subject underlying the protest. What matters is that you have a First Amendment right to protest. And the Black Lives Matter movement, actually, it's not exactly one particular movement. There are several factions of the Black Lives Matter movement, so it's difficult to answer with respect to any particular movement. But I will tell you that we have to do the same thing we do for everyone. We have to be aware of potential biases. We have to not only understand that you might have bias, but find ways to overcome those biases, including making sure that you check your decisions, making sure that you understand different perspectives. So I don't expect that to affect my decision.
I apologize. Your time has expired, and I forgot to give you the 20-second warning. So that's my error, and I apologize for that. Judge Fogelman.
Thank you. The most important thing that I do, first of all, is to recognize that we all have implicit bias, and it's something that we've experienced through our environment and how we deal with the world. And so it's important for me as a jurist to make sure that I understand and recognize implicit bias and deal with it at all times in the courtroom and frankly in my life generally. I do that. And another thing, since I'm not a person of color, it's important that I educate myself and try to understand a little bit better what people of color deal with on a regular basis. And to that end, I've taken steps to become more educated about these issues, including being a participant on the Bar Association's Racial Justice Council, being a participant in the State Bar Association's Committee on Equality and Fairness. And those are steps that I think are important to make sure that I have a better understanding of what people of color have to address in the court system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Yes. As a judge, and I will reflect back to the 60s, if we look at history, we have a First Amendment right to protest. The Black Lives Matter being labeled as a radical group is unacceptable. Over the history, Martin Luther King was considered a radical, but the laws say we must apply them impartially, without any biases, and make sure that they are applied fairly and equally, no matter what race, color, or gender. We live in a society today where there are trying times. George Floyd, and it has been politicized. I have embedded myself with other cultures, just not Blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians. And I feel that as a judge, we must look at the law and the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge McCullough.
Yes, well, psychologists tell us that everybody over the age of about 5 does have biases. Okay, you're kidding yourself if you think you don't have any biases. And that's not a moral judgment on anybody. I'm not criticizing anybody in particular, because whether you're old, young, Black, white, male, female, there are biases that are inherent in all of us. Implicit bias, by definition, is a bias that you don't know you have. The key is you cannot let it affect your decision-making. Now, part of that is you expose yourself in your life and your career to people who are from other types of cultures, other types of backgrounds, people who don't look like you and have done that. That's really important. The second thing you do is you check your decisions as you make them carefully, every decision. There are no shortcuts in this. Sometimes you just have to slow down and think about it just to make sure there's nothing improper that's influencing your decision. I've been doing that for 32 years, and people of all races and colors have trusted me to do that. They trust me because I listen to what they have to say, and I pay attention to what they have to say. I don't prejudge things. I don't walk into a courtroom already deciding certain things. It's important that a judge let the facts in that particular case control what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre.
Sometimes, even though individual parties might not necessarily be prejudiced, the system itself reaches prejudice results. For instance, the Justice Policy Institute says that Maryland incarcerates a higher percentage of its young Black males than any other state in the country. So individually, people might not necessarily feel like they're prejudiced or they have reached prejudice results. However, the research speaks for itself. I think it's very important to address the issues as to what the results are, rather than say, well, individually, I'm not racist, or I don't have any bias. Like, I myself have taken implicit bias training at least 3 times in my life. The first time that I remember it was when I was a military police officer. You're required to take that. I don't think that just saying that, okay, I'm not racist or I'm not biased. Yes, that's true. Everybody is racist. Everybody is biased in the sense that we live in the society that we live at. But I really think that it's the results that should be looked upon rather than just saying individually, we're not who we hope we're not.
Thank you very much. The next question is, the rate of incarceration in state prisons for Blacks is more than 5 times the rate for whites. In 5 states, it's 10-1, and in 12 states, more than half of the prison population is Black. It is readily apparent that the broken criminal justice system is a product of racial and ethnic disparities. 2 explanations for the disparities in the criminal justice system are implicit bias and stereotypes in decision-making. How do you ensure that you apply the law fairly and equally in every instance, regardless of the race, religion, and economic status of the individual coming before your court? And as a judge, do you believe there's room for mercy or compassion in your courtroom based upon life circumstances? You have 2 minutes to respond to this question, and we will start with Judge Fogelson.
Thank you.
Fogelman, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. So in my background, I've been an advocate for people of all races and all backgrounds as an assistant public defender, for example. The first several years of my practice were as an assistant public defender, where I represented a very diverse group of clients who whose one of their main interests, obviously, was avoiding incarceration. And obviously, my interest was in trying to keep those people from being incarcerated if they were found guilty of a crime. And that's been a part of my mentality throughout the years. And as a judge, incarceration of a criminal defendant is really the last thing that I want to do. It's important to look at alternatives to incarceration. We have in Montgomery County a very robust drug court and an equally robust mental health court. I'm proud that I was asked, even though I've only been on the bench a relatively brief period of time, to be one of the 3 judges that serve on the mental health court. And in that capacity, our primary goal is to keep people out of jail, because some of those people that come into that court are there only because of their mental health issues. So it is something that's paramount in my mind anytime I have a criminal case. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, excuse me. Ms. Pierre.
James Baldwin says that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I think it's really important that we look to see what is behind these numbers that Reverend Moultrie, you spoke about. Because in and of themselves, there should not be, those numbers should not be as stark as they are. The Justice Policy Institute talks about how Black people are not more likely to commit crimes than white people. So if that is true, why is the incarceration rate so out of sync with what the reality should be? As a judge, I will practice restorative justice, because with restorative justice, the hope is to give closure to the victim, to give mercy to the criminal, and to give justice to the community. I think that's one of the ways that we can lower the disparity. I think another way to lower the disparity is to look to see what is behind all of that. We have seen, not just in the criminal justice system, but with other systems, where people of color are disproportionately having negative things impacted on them. And I think it's time that we examine ourselves as a society to see what can we do to protect, as the Bible says, the least of these.
Thank you very much. Judge Barry.
Thank you so much. So how do we apply the law fairly is the first question. You apply the law fairly by broadening your own perspective so that you're not limited to your own life experience, that you understand what other people have gone through. We know that obviously racism exists in almost every crevice of our society. We know that when we have a person in front of us, a person of color, that there are circumstances that stack on each that may have helped to put that person before us in an unfortunate circumstance, like poverty, like housing problems, like education, poor education, for the lack of resources, and of course, unfair treatment. And so one of the things that I think is important in Montgomery County that we do is when we're dealing with pretrial, for example, we have a pretty robust pretrial services unit that investigates what's going on with this person. So they're looking at not only your criminal history, but they're looking at what are your circumstances, your family, do you have any drug problems, alcohol problems, things like that. What are your financial circumstances, so that we can make a determination of what's going to happen before trial. We don't want to, as Judge Fogelman said, we don't want to put people in jail. We want to try to help them and protect the community at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
You know, Lady Justice was supposed to be fair and impartial, but in the African-American male community, it has not. I grew up in a public housing project, raised by a grandmother. I know for a fact, if I was not given opportunities, I would have been part of the system. Opportunities to start off with. Inequalities, if we look at the pandemic, African Americans, Hispanics were impacted the most. On a bike ride this week, a young man with ADHD told me he sold drugs because he didn't get the attention in high school. These are the things that we need to take in consideration. Backgrounds of individuals, their environment, home environment, the education they come from, the educational opportunities, job opportunities, economic opportunities. These are the things that have impacted the African Americans over the years since Reconstruction. I attended an HBC law school. I learned from that law school, giving back, caring for others is paramount. I grew up in an African American community. My neighbors I was responsible not only to my neighborhood, but also to my neighbors. Today, African Americans, the system is set up so that we are impacted more than any other race. And until we have a reformed criminal justice system, it will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Judge McAuliffe.
Yes, I think the question dealt with how do we deal with this in the courtroom? And what Judge Barry said is exactly right. Step one is you brought in your own perspective. That's correct. We need to do that. And we do that through our own life experiences, through our professional careers, who we represented and who we worked for. And we do it in the courtroom by, and I keep coming back to this, by listening, by really listening. It's not enough even that the person before you knows you're listening. I want that young man, in this case, because Mr. Johnson brought up young man, I want his parents in the back of the courtroom, his mom and dad, to know that I'm listening, that that judge is listening to every word this young man says, because it matters. It has to matter to the judge, and the parents have to know it. The young man has to know it. We've done certain things to reduce the rate of incarceration. We've gotten rid of cash bail. In Montgomery County, there is nobody sitting on cash bail. As of right now, our jail, and it's Monday night, as of last Friday, our jail is at 40% of capacity. And I think a lot of people my age can remember when every report about jails, they were all 200% of capacity. It's at 40% of capacity. We also talked about, Judge Fogelman mentioned some of the programs like the drug court and the mental health court. Well, there are other programs too. We have all kinds of drug rehab. We have alcohol rehab. We have community service programs. There are a lot of alternatives available to judges, so we don't have to put people in jail. We'll also tell people, I've been a judge now for not quite a year, about 9 months, and I haven't put anybody in jail yet because I haven't had to. Nobody wants to put people in jail. The Justice Initiative that Ms. Pierre mentioned, they say that the biggest problem driving the racial disparity is mandatory minimums for 18 to 24-year-old men, that these young people are being sentenced as if they were 30, and they shouldn't be. And their solution is let judges do the sentencings, because then we can take into consideration that person's individual.
Time has expired. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Sorry if I went long, Reverend.
So the next question. The expression driving while black was coined because of the outcomes for black and brown folk who, for example, are driving and fail to give signal for changing lanes, or whose cars have a bad tail light, are different than it is for white persons who have the same infractions. Many black and brown folk who find themselves stopped by police for those reasons often find themselves arrested and charged for something that may be totally unrelated to the reason for which they were originally stopped. As a judge, how would you see yourself mitigating those negative outcomes for black and brown people, knowing that the statistics support the facts that black or brown persons are stopped more frequently for minor infractions than white persons? We're giving you 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to this, and we're going to start with Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you. My son was 2 years old. I was on Wisconsin Avenue, had a trial in New Orleans flying out. I had to go out and purchase some wash detergent, and was stopped by a police officer. He accused me of drinking. I don't drink. And actually put my hands on the steering wheel. I did everything. He asked me what I did, and I told him what I did. So anyway, it's profiling. And I think as a judge, we should have the officer come before us. listen to his or her testimony, and also have the person who was stopped and get the facts. But we as a judge, driving while black, statistically, we have to, as a society, say it is time for judicial reform. And it takes two judges participating as in advisory groups to make sure that judicial reform is part of the judicial system. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Judge McAuliffe.
Yes, well, obviously, if someone is stopped, there has to be a hearing. We already do that. The officer does have to come forward and explain why this person was stopped. And they have to give a non-biased reason. Okay, they have to be able to articulate why the stop took place. They can't just stop somebody because they felt like it. That's unconstitutional. Secondly, if they stop somebody for a minor infraction and then they decide to go further and search somebody or arrest somebody, they have to have a separate probable cause reason for that. And judges enforce this every day. I mean, we have probable cause hearings every day. And we can't just say the driver has to testify, because they have a right to remain silent. It's not up to us to force them to testify. They can testify if they want, but the officer has to give a non-biased constitutional reason for the traffic stop, and then a non-biased reason for any arrest or any search. I have argued those cases on behalf of drivers for years. I have found not every county is receptive to that, but Montgomery County is receptive to that. I've had stops suppressed when I was representing somebody. I've had judges say, no, that's not a good enough reason to stop somebody, and that's not a good enough reason to search somebody. As a defense lawyer for 32 years, I've tried those cases. I didn't win all of them, but I certainly won some of them. And I think judges understand why this is important. Our society is counting on us, and you need to be careful about this, and you need to be sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pierre.
I have lived in houses that have been mainly, I guess, Black males since I could remember. Right now, since I have two sons and my husband, it's just my daughter and I guess the three males. So I understand this issue in a way that I don't think other people understand it. When I campaign out on the streets, I cannot tell you the stories that the stories that I've heard from Black men have just been so horrendous. Yes, the law says you're not supposed to stop somebody without probable cause. Yes, the law says this, the law says that. However, the reality is actually different. As Mr. Johnson says, he got stopped for no apparent reason except that he looks the way that he looks. And that's not right. By the time the case gets into court, most people have gone through so much that they said, you know what, I might as well plead guilty. We have, I think, an over 90% plea rate. So a lot of these cases aren't tried. A lot of people don't have the money to give to an attorney to try those cases. I think what we need to do as a society is to look at all the parts of our criminal justice system. As a former military police officer, I find it appalling at some of the things that I hear police officers doing, because I know that my commander would not have put up with some of the things that are being put up with right now. And I think had we have better leadership in the police department, that would be better. If we then go to the prosecutors and have better leadership in the prosecutor's office in terms of prosecuting things that aren't exactly, that are kind of suspect, then that would be an issue as well. So it's a three-pronged system. It's not just a
Thank you. Your time has expired. Judge Berry.
Thank you so much. I believe the question was, how do you, as a judge, mitigate those outcomes? You listen carefully, you pay attention. One of the things that is interesting about this job is we'll have what's called EEP duty, emergency evaluation petitions. It's overnight duty, and on the weekends, it's all day. And one of the things you have to do is review search warrants. And so you'll get awakened at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you'll get a search warrant, and you have to make sure that that warrant has probable cause. Okay. And so that's our responsibility, no matter what time of the day it is. And I take that responsibility very seriously. That issue will also come up when it comes to whether or not you're going to exclude evidence. A person can be stopped and they can have a truckload of drugs that they fully intend to sell to the kids at the school down the street. And if that stop is bad, or if that warrant is bad, that evidence will be excluded. And that's the worst possible outcome. Okay, it's horrible that people out there have to be afraid that they are going to get stopped. Even the law-abiding people have to be afraid that they're going to be stopped simply because they fit some profile. So that's our responsibility, to just be very careful, be very thoughtful about what it is that happened in that particular circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Vogelman.
Thank you. In our criminal jury trials, we instruct our jurors, actually during the voir dire process, which is jury selection, we ask our jurors, would you believe the testimony of a law enforcement officer over the testimony of any other witness? And not surprisingly, there are some people who will actually come up and say, well, if a police officer says it, it must be true. I don't ask my jurors, I call them mine, they're not mine, but the jurors that are in my courtroom, I don't ask them to do anything that I don't do myself. And I check myself, and I know that police officers are human beings like everybody else, and they're subject to all the same problems and issues that anybody else might have. And they're no more or less truthful than anybody else, and no more or less believable than anybody else. So I take that personally to heart, and I think that's one way that we check it. From having been a public defender and represented people who would come to me and tell me what happened between them and the police officers, there were oftentimes simply too many things to be able to say, oh, this is just coincidence. It wasn't based upon the fact that of the color of your skin. So I've learned that over the years that is unfortunately still part of our system. And I'm very, very careful when I hear testimony of any witness, but particularly knowing what I've learned over the years, police officers, when I don't really see a good reason for them having stopped an individual who happens to be a person of color. It obviously is an intimidating experience for a person of color. I've been stopped. I know it's intimidating for me. I can't imagine how intimidating it would be for somebody of color to get stopped. Thank you.
Thank you. So listen, we have a significant number of people watching this on YouTube, I find, and they're submitting questions. So we're going to deviate from our prepared questions and ask one directly from our listening audience. To provide context, we know that from the early days of slavery, it was easily to keep oppressed people enslaved and down if you destroyed the family unit. If you continually disrupted the family unit, it was easy to control people. It's proven that most cases in the circuit court are family cases. How will you, as a judge, preserve the families considering the best interests of children? We're going to give you 2 minutes to respond to this, and we're going to start with Judge McAuliffe.
There we go. Well, I think everybody knows that in a family case, the number one rule, if there is a dispute over children, over custody of children, and I think I've tried as many custody cases as anybody, the issue is the best interest of the children. That's what the judge is always determined, is supposed to determine. That's what you care about. What is the best interest of the children? Now, it is true that sometimes people involved in these fights fight so much that nobody's looking out for the children. It's heartbreaking sometimes. Mom and dad are so interested in fighting with each other that it just wears out this child. And sometimes we even appoint separate attorneys. I've been that attorney before, where the judge will appoint an attorney to represent the interests of the child because you're not satisfied that either parent is really looking out for the child. The venom has taken over so much that maybe the child's welfare is not being looked out for. And you need an independent voice to say, how is this child really doing in school? How happy is this child? Does the child have a therapist? Does the child talk to the therapist? Is the child getting what they need from the therapist? These are heart-wrenching decisions. The best thing you can do, number one, you're always looking out for the best interest of the child, but the best thing you can do is make sure that the child has an independent voice, because sometimes mom and dad aren't looking out for the child. They're too busy fighting with each other. And we honestly see that all the time. Lots of times if there's no money in the case, you have to ask a lawyer to represent that child for free. I've done that before because judges do that. The lawyers do that all the time. I'm not congratulating myself. Lawyers take those cases all the time for free because the child needs a separate voice. So that's the biggest thing I can think of in terms of making sure that child is protected.
Thank you, Judge McAuliffe. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Reverend.
Having been a high school teacher, I had a young man that was a straight A student, and his grades dropped down to D, and called the parents, and the parents was fighting. They did not care about their child. All they were interested in was themselves. I think as a judge, you bring people that is familiar with the parents and the child. You do background checks on the parents, background checks on the child to determine what is in the best interest of the child. Psychologists, independent attorneys, appointed for the child, independent attorney. But the goal is to keep the family together. And if mom or dad needs therapy, then order the therapy to make sure that they understand that they have a kid that they're impacting his or her life, because that scar will remain with them for the rest of their lives. I feel that with all endurance, every effort should be made to protect the child and to work in the best interest of the child and make sure that every stone is turned over to protect the child and keep the family together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fogelman. Judge Fogelman.
Thank you, Reverend. The first 19 months that I spent on the bench as a circuit court judge, I was assigned to the family rotation. So it seemed like I would have 2 or 3 custody cases, contested custody cases a week. So over time, I began to realize that there was an easy way to decide custody, but not a good way to do it. And that would be, we'll just give full custody to one parent. We'll have the other parent be an alternating weekend parent. We'll give them a dinner with the child or children in the week in between, and everything would be fine. I avoided that temptation because I thought that was an easy way out, but not the best way to deal with custody. So one of the things that I see all the time is both parents will testify that they just can't communicate with the other. And so I watch them throughout the course of the trial. I listen to what they say, I watch their body language, and I look at their communications, usually text messages or emails that they've had with each other. And what I find is they can communicate, but they're choosing not to. And that's not in the best interest of the minor child. So what we can do is we can have the parents attend co-parenting classes. There are parent effectiveness training classes. And I do whatever I can to keep the families together, because once you split them up, the damage to a child can be long lasting. And it's easy, as I said, to make these snap decisions. And I avoid doing that at all costs. I like to look at all the issues and all the factors and make the right decision for each family. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pierre.
I was appointed by the circuit court to become a facilitator, a family law facilitator, and I did that for over 10 years. I've also been doing children in need of assistance cases for almost 28 years. And that type of experience has been really, really helpful in terms of understanding the family dynamics. When I speak to parents, I speak to them about why it is important to do what is in the best interest of the children. And I speak to them about what happens when they don't do that. I speak to them about how that child then becomes parentified. And by the child being parentified, the child then says, you know, you two are fighting and you're not really treating me as a child, you're treating me as a commodity. Therefore, I'm just going to take things in my own hands. And showing the parents that perspective, I have gotten some really good results in terms of making sure that the parents are able to see that there's a greater good if they could just cooperate with one another. Also, with the children, I've gotten really good results. I've had children who have no parents who are involved in their cases at all. And the idea of them being abandoned by their parents is just so traumatic. It is really difficult for them to go on. And I cannot tell you how many psychiatric institutes I've visited my clients and how many times I you know, it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm in the hospital with them because I know that they need that support. But I could tell you that they have also been very successful because they know that at least one person is there caring for them. And I have had children who have graduated from.
Expired. Thank you very much for your response. Judge Barry.
Thank you so much. So this is relevant in several contexts, one of which is the child in need of assistance cases, SENA cases, where these are the cases where you have the worst type of abuse and neglect. And the goal in those cases, most times, is to reunify the family, the children to the parents. The goal is to try to address the underlying problem. And so there's drug treatment, there's mental health treatment, there are various services that are offered, there's monitoring, there's visitation, supervised visitation, there's visitation in a therapeutic setting. So that is the goal. That is the goal, to reunify the family. And sometimes that's just not going to work because maybe the family isn't interested in it, the parent isn't interested enough, or the child has been so abused and so traumatized that you can't do it. But that generally, that's what's going to happen. That's what we want to happen. In divorce cases, you know, they're divorce cases. So your goal is to make sure that the best interest of the child is served. And generally, that's going to be served by parents having access to their children. So it's rarely going to be a case where a parent doesn't have access to the children in a normal divorce case. It might be the case more so in a SENA matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Barry. So, disparate judicial treatment of persons in marginalized communities in civil and criminal proceedings suggests that everyone is not equal before the law. For example, many people believe that a poor man who can't afford an expensive lawyer is far more likely to go to jail or be subject to a more severe civil penalty than a fraudster with a high-powered lawyer. As a judge, what tools are available to you? And how would you use those tools to ensure that every defendant receives fair and competent representation before a decision is rendered? And I'm going to allow you 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to that question. And we're going to start with Ms. Pierre.
One of my heroes is Brian Stevenson. Brian Stevenson is the author of the book Just Mercy, and Michael B. Jordan plays him in the movie Just Mercy. And Brian Stevenson is this amazing person who is helping keep people off of death row. And he says that he realized when a judge declared his 14-year-old client to be an adult, that the judge can also declare that his 14-year-old client be tried as a 75-year-old white business executive. And so he did a motion to do that. And my job would be to try everybody like a 75-year-old white business executive. And I think if we were to have that standard, we would not have the racial disparities and these other negative disparities that we have in the judicial system.
Thank you. Judge Barry.
Thank you. So we have this concept in family cases called parens patriae, and what that means is that the court stands in the shoes of the parent in order to protect children. The reason I raise that is I have more ability I can't represent the person. I have to be impartial, okay? But I have more ability to ask the questions and get the information that I need in order to make a decision. But if I'm in a jury trial, for example, or a criminal jury trial, I don't make the decision about what's going to happen. I control the courtroom. I address evidentiary issues. I don't have the ability to make sure that this attorney is a competent attorney. That's not my role. And part of what we do as judges is we have to ensure that we show restraint and that we don't step out of the role that we have. If it's a criminal defendant, they can certainly make a complaint about ineffective assistance. But I can't do that. All I can do is try to make sure that the evidence is presented, whatever evidence is presented, that I make sure that that's done in a reasonable way, and that the trial goes forward in a reasonable and fair way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Judge Fogelman.
This is a question we often get during the vetting process. What do you do when you have a very experienced attorney on one side and a self-represented individual on the other side? And can you do something to help the self-represented individual who clearly is disadvantaged going up against the very experienced trial attorney on the other side? And it's a difficult question. We can't really balance the playing field, unfortunately. As much as our heart tells us that's what we'd like to do, we can't do it. But what I can do, for example, in a family case, I can explain the procedures to a self-represented litigant, and I do. I tell them I can't help you decide when to make an objection or when to oppose an exhibit being received in evidence, but I can tell you what the procedure is. And frankly, the lawyers don't like when I do that, but I'm going to do it. And I tell them it's not just to help you, but it's to help me run an efficient and orderly courtroom. And that'll help me get to the best decision in this case. So that's one way that I can do it. And it's mostly in the family area that I try to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge McAuliffe.
Yes, thank you, Reverend. There are three types of cases that come before the circuit court. One are criminal cases, the second is civil cases, and the third is family cases. And the answer to the question is a little bit different for each type of case. In criminal cases, a person without means has the availability of the public defender. In my judgment, public defenders get a bad rap because there are some excellent lawyers in the public defender's office. You know, are they overworked? Are they overbusy? Yeah. Should we have more funding for the public defenders? Yes. But there are some exceptional trial lawyers in the public defender's office. And so in criminal cases, you don't have this imbalance of a person representing themselves very often. At least if they do, it's not because of means. It's not because they can't afford a lawyer, because they get one for free from the public defender's office. In civil cases and family cases, it's harder because they don't have an automatic right to a lawyer. And sometimes you do have people come in and they're asking for the wrong things. They don't know what to object to. They don't know what to argue, and it's a problem. And you know what? There's no automatic answer that works in every case. You do the best you can. I see I'm almost out of time. You do the best you can in civil cases. In family cases where there are children involved, then you can be more aggressive because there's a third person there, the child, who's not represented. Then you have to be more aggressive. Sorry, Reverend, I hope I didn't go over time there.
No, I would have stopped you. Thank you so much. Mr. Johnson.
Let's start off with judicial reform. In criminal cases, most times the public defender, he has a caseload that is burdensome. He or she does not have the resources to do justice to those cases. And a lot of times those criminal defendants plea out in order to save time. It's recommended by the public defender. You have pro se litigants who they represent themselves. Those individuals, sometimes the judge will tell them, you know, it will be in your best interest to get an attorney. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. Family law, they can get assistance, but in civil cases, they do not get assistance. There are resources like legal aid to give them assistance. So you can direct them to legal aid. In jury trials, well, you cannot advise the individual doing a trial. However, but if you have incompetent representation in a criminal matter, you can refer them.
Justin, your time's expired. I'm sorry. I tried to flag you with the 20 seconds, but you were looking up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's okay.
So we have another question from the folks that are listening, and I hope I frame this properly for you. And they say they took some liberty raising the age to be consistent with what juvenile justice says. But starting around 20 years ago, the Supreme Court recognized that teenagers' brains are not fully formed. Do you think that individuals who are incarcerated between the ages of 18 and 28, well, actually, I have heard of cases where 14, 15, 16-year-olds were tried as adults, where children tried as adults should be housed with inmates who are older than 28 years old. Do you think that's effective dispensation of justice? Let's start, and I think, what did it say? We're going to give you a minute and a half to respond to that. We'll start with Judge Berry.
Thank you for that question. It's a very general question, and so it's impossible for me to say yes or no that children or persons between the age of 18 and 24 should be charged as adults. That's going to depend on a lot of things, including the severity of the crime and the evidence that was presented. I do recognize that children's brains are not fully developed until around 25, and sometimes not even at that point. It's interesting, there's a region of the brain that's responsible for immediate reactions such as fear and aggressive behavior, and that develops pretty early. And then that part of the brain that deals with reason develops a little bit later. And you recognize that, which is why you don't want to necessarily impose these lengthy sentences with no opportunity to rehabilitate, particularly with young people, because there is that room to change. But I can't say that no one between 18 and 24 should be charged as an adult. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Fogelman.
As judges, we're not able to make the law. We have to apply the law as the legislature passes it. And so young adults who are 18 years of age are charged as adults and treated in the criminal justice system as adults. Whether I agree with that or not, I can tell you all that my wife and I have raised 5 now adult children, chronologically adult children, and they've passed through that stage for the most part. But judgment is still an issue at that age, and we have to be aware of that. So when I have somebody in that age range who has committed a crime that's before me in the courtroom for sentencing or for disposition, I do have to consider where they are in terms of their maturity level, despite their chronological age. So that is a factor that I consider, because I consider each case and each person that comes before me as individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
You know, I'd like to clear up something. I've heard this repeated before, and they say judges don't make law, but Holloway versus Fitzgerald in 1982 was a judicial decision that started police qualified immunity. That being said, I feel that a Harvard study and a Stanford study says that a young adult's brain does not mature until 25 when there's drug or alcohol use. I would look at the facts and circumstances and also an evaluation by a clinical psychologist. When you're rendering a decision, you must take everything into consideration. So do I feel that an 18-year-old should be tried as an adult? I would say the facts and circumstances and the evaluation will make a determination, should be determination of a judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge McCullough.
Yes, sir. Reverend, I honestly don't know anybody who was the same person at 30 years old that they were at 18. That's just not how life works. You're a different person. The world looks different to you when you're older than it does when you're 18. And now we have a law from the legislature that says when you're 18, you are tried in adult court, and no judge has the right to send you to juvenile court. The Justice Policy Initiative study that we talked about before found that the main driver of the racial disparity that we talked about in incarceration is mandatory sentencing of young Black men between 18 and 24. And they said when the mandatory sentences are applied, you get this enormous racial disparity. If it is left to a judge to decide whether that mandatory minimum should apply, they don't apply it to young people. I mean, nobody's going to treat an 18-year-old the same as a 30-year-old. Now, I'm not saying an 18-year-old is never responsible for their actions. We're all responsible for our actions. but they're not as responsible and not in the same way as a 30, 40-year-old. And it's not fair to treat them that way. Right now, the law requires that if you're 18 when you commit the crime, you have to be treated and sentenced as an adult. For mandatory minimums, they go to jail for a long time. For other crimes, the judge can take youth into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre.
As Mr. Johnson said, scientists do say that our brains are not fully formed until we're about 25 years old, and with trauma, it could take even longer than that. So that is very, very important. I have been in court with people who have committed a crime, and the judges see it as a crime, and they have rendered punishment. I have been watching the same judge as well with someone who has been accused of the same thing, but it was considered youthful exuberance. So the difference between youthful exuberance and a crime sometimes has to do with what the person looks like, and also what it is that the judge thinks that the person deserves based on what they look like. I think it's really important to note that at a certain point, we have to look to find out what is behind the disparities. It's one thing to say, well, this is the disparity, this is the disparity. We need to find out what is behind the disparity. And unless we address the issue, we're never going to find out. And I think that we need to address the issue and address it head on.
Thank you. So I'm going to declare executive privilege here, and I'm going to ask us to revisit this question, because each of you responded to the forefront of this in whether or not they should be tried as adults. But there was another part of this question: should they be housed and incarcerated along with these other people? I mean, if we are truly trying to find ways to render justice and help young people and break the cycles, do we put children in with hardened criminals? And so I want to just kind of take some things off the table, if you don't mind. We know that while you guys are bound by certain standards and sentencing guidelines and those things, we do know that you do have some discretion. And there are mental facilities, there are other ways to address these kinds of things. So to just say no, I think if they do the crime, they do the time, doesn't work for me. I'm asking for a deeper answer. And I'm only going to give you 1 minute to address this. And I'm actually going to just go right back through the exact same order, starting with Judge Berry.
So we're talking about a couple of things. One is whether if you are going to incarcerate a person and their age is 18 to 24, whether they should be incarcerated with other adults. And if the law says that they're incarcerated with adults, they're going to be incarcerated with adults. I don't have the ability, as Judge Fogelman said, to change the law. I just don't. The second part of that question is, well, are you going to consider alternatives to incarceration? All right. And the answer is yes. That is going to be based on what the severity of the crime and whether I can ensure that the community is protected at the same time that I'm trying to address this individual's issues and try to help this individual to become a more proactive, a better member of the community.
So Judge Berry, I apologize.
Okay.
I got so enthralled in wanting to hear an answer that I forgot to give you the 20-second warning.
Okay.
So I apologize for that, but thank you for your answer. Judge Fogelman.
Well, obviously, we all know that there are some cases that are so extreme and so severe that we really don't have a lot of options other than to incarcerate somebody. If somebody commits a murder, for example, I think the community needs to have protection from somebody in that situation. So we don't really have an alternative for there. We're really talking about nonviolent offenders here. So the alternatives include no jail with probation, with certain conditions of probation that might ensure the person's successful reentry into the community as a law-abiding citizen. If we have to incarcerate somebody, we look at local versus state incarceration, because we all know there's a big difference between the Montgomery County Detention Center and a state facility. And then we look at mental health court and we look at drug court as other alternatives to incarceration. And I consider all those options.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
As I stated previously, we need judicial reform. As a judge, I would actively be involved in an advisory capacity for judicial reform. And an 18-year-old with a mental health problem should not be incarcerated with an older person. Or if it's a nonviolent crime or some crimes that may be violent, you have to look at what was the cause. Was it drug abuse? Was it a family issue that put this individual in that situation? Anyway, I think judicial reform would assist in avoiding some of the difficulties of putting an 18-year-old with a 28-year-old. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge McCullough.
Yes, Reverend, as I stated before, nobody that I know, including myself, is the same person at age 30 as they were at 18. And I think a judge has to think long and hard before you lock up an 18-year-old. I'm not saying that an 18-year-old gets a pass and they're not responsible for their actions, but they are not responsible in the same way and to the same degree as an older person. I think you have to weigh those things in, because if you lock that person up, you're going to end up locking them up with adults. And that's a really terrible thing. You don't take that lightly. I would have a very hard time locking up an 18-year-old because I know they're going to end up with adults and I have to hesitate. I don't have the ability to segregate them. I would hesitate very long and hard to lock someone up who's that young, somebody who's 18 to 24. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pierre.
It was my understanding that, Reverend Moultrie, you were asking for people younger than 18. Was that your question?
It was young people. The question came in as an 18-year-old, but I did an audible and actually suggested even younger.
Well, that's what I thought. Yes. The law says that, well, the law is very clear. When you're under 18, most of the time, what happens is you don't get charged with a crime. You get charged with a delinquent act. And the reason for that is because the law says that under 18-year-olds are supposed to be disciplined and they're supposed to be rehabilitated, instead of when you're over 18, you're supposed to be punished. And that's what the important part is in this situation. When you're being rehabilitated, there are certain places that you go. When you're being punished, there are other places that you go. So no, I don't believe that under 18-year-olds should be placed in the same facilities as over 18-year-olds.
Thank you very much for your answer. Okay, so I think take time for one last question before we do wrap up, if you guys are okay with that. And I'm going totally off script, so I apologize to everybody that's supporting me. But this question has been plaguing me, and I have to ask this question. I read a story recently about a young man in another state who had been incarcerated for 23 years, and he's up for parole. And he was denied parole. Each time he had come up for parole, he was denied parole. He was incarcerated at age 17 for stealing a pair of hair clippers. Retail value less than $100. But yet, 23 years later, he still can't get out of prison. I am clear that there are a lot of things that happen in accordance with the law that cause certain things to go into motion. My question is, and my challenge is, there are so many cases that are nonviolent, that have ineffective assistance of counsel, that have no counsel, that have just bad policing, that have so many other things going wrong. And once it leaves the judge's courtroom, the judge is perfectly justified in saying, there's nothing I can do. But is there anything inside the courtroom that the judge can do to try to bring justice to bear in any of these kinds of cases? I know I'm asking a broad general question, but I think people want to know what reform really can look like. And reform has to start in the mind and in the heart. We've got to start changing the way we look, listen, and feel about some of these things. So let me go. I'm sorry. And we're going to start with Judge McCollum. I'm sorry. I'm going to, we are running out of time. I've asked a difficult question, but I'm only going to give you 1 minute to deal with the question.
Okay, well, 1 minute on that. Well, first of all, that story is monstrous. I'm staggered that anybody could have that kind of a result. Who is this young man? And he needs a lawyer immediately because he should be let out today. That's monstrous. But I mean, I've been doing criminal law for 32 years and I never had anything close to the horrible result like that. In terms of what can we do? We can pay attention to each case as it comes in, but the legislature has restricted our ability to know what happens 5 years later. We can pay attention to the cases as they come in. Putting somebody in jail for stealing a pair of clippers at 17, that by itself is horrific. But the idea that the young man doesn't get out, like I said before, you're not the same person when you're 30 as you were when you were 18 or even 17. I'm stunned by a story like that. It certainly never happened to any of my clients, I'll tell you that much. And it's not going to happen to anybody in my courtroom. But since we only have 1 minute, I'm not sure what else I can tell you. I'm kind of getting over the shock of the story, honestly.
I've expired, Judge. Thank you so much for your response. Ms. Pierre.
Well, that's actually one of the reasons why I'm running, because they're just such desperate treatment in these stories. I could tell you hundreds. I could think of a young girl who was accused of stealing an item from Walmart for $4.99. And instead of the judge giving her probation before judgment, so that way she would not have a criminal record, the judge found her guilty. So she has since graduated from the University of Maryland, but she cannot get a job because she has to check the box, and the ban the box does not apply to her because she was convicted of a crime. So she cannot get this expunged, which means that she actually has to wait 5 years from now until hopefully the governor, who's 5 years from now, gives her a pardon so she could get an expungement. So you hear about tens and thousands of these stories where justice, the way it's written in the law and the way it's actually practiced is
I'm
proper.
sorry, your time has expired. Thank you for your response, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Judge. I will start off by saying that we need to take profits out of the the prison systems to start off with. I've lived in a state where 3 strikes, you're out. I'm from the South. That's common knowledge. When we take the profits out of the criminal justice systems and prison reform, it will stop. And until then, it's going to continue. And it mostly affects African Americans. And that's all. It's one of the travesties of justice. And thank you, Judge. Thank you, Ms. Holtry. Reverend Holtry, thank you. I'm done.
I've been promoted. Judge Fogelman.
Well, I'll say, Reverend, you asked the hardest questions, so I was happy I didn't have to go first. But the story that you related, I certainly doesn't sound familiar to me, and I don't think it's happened in Montgomery County. And I like to believe that our bench the 24 judges that we have on our bench would never do anything like that. Even the quote unquote toughest sentencers on our bench would not impose a sentence like that. So I hope you don't tell me it's a Montgomery County case. But what I try to do in my courtroom is to try to make sure these types of things don't happen. And there are no easy answers. I try to talk to people and I try to give the benefit of the doubt whenever I can to someone who's in a desperate situation like that.
Thank you. And last but not least, Judge Barry.
Thank you so much. So unless he stole those hedge clippers and impaled someone in the face with it and murdered them, he's not going to get 23 years in prison. The parole board decides whether or not a person is going to be paroled. That's an independent agency. We have no say in that, none at all. In fact, after 5 years, within 5 years, the court can modify a sentence. After 5 years, we have no authority to do it. So unfortunately, while I may want to do something, again, I am restrained by the law, the legislature and the judiciary, two different branches. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for your responses, and I thank you for your sacrifice of time today. It has, I think, been eye-opening, and I hope that how many people did we have online at the peak? Yeah. So we've had a lot of ups and downs, but we have 55 people online right now listening to this. And so I'm going to give each of you 2 minutes to wrap up and share whatever you want to share that allows the voters to know who you are and why they should want to vote for you. I'm going to start with Mr. Johnson.
Thank you again. As I said earlier, I am running as a write-in campaign. Campaigning as a write-in candidate. My name will not appear on the ballot. I'm asking your support. I do not believe in police qualified immunity. I think police officers should be treated like any other person. I am committed to judicial and police reform. As a judge, I will work in an advisory capacity for judicial and police reform. I will advance the law for all who live in Montgomery County. I'm the only person here that have not received campaign contributions. My campaign is self-funded. Out of the 24 current judges on the circuit court, there is no African-American male judge, and it has not been one in 6 years. I ask for your support. As a community member, I will make a significant contribution to the court, and I feel there should be representation. The county is a diverse county, and it is insulting to the county not to have a person of color, male person of color, represented on the court. Thank you. And one other thing, vote and vote early. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge McAuliffe.
Yes, Reverend, thank you for having us tonight. And thank you to the folks who are watching and listening. Judges are leaders. That comes with the territory. Sometimes leadership has more to do with listening than it does with talking. Many of the problems in our society don't get solved because people spend more time talking and they don't listen to each other. I want to talk for a minute about, because I thought it would come up, but it really didn't, about the vetting process and how we became judges and who does the interviews. Because I've heard people say, well, it's probably some network of people or some old boy network. And I want to share with you These are the people who vetted us, who checked into us, who investigated us, and decided that we were qualified to be judges. These are the actual groups. There's the J. Franklin Bourne Bar Association, which is an African-American bar association. Ms. Pierre's familiar with that. The Women's Bar Association, the Maryland Hispanic Bar Association, the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Bar Association of Maryland, the Alliance of Black Women Attorneys of Maryland, Inc., the Monumental City Bar Association, which is an African-American bar association in Baltimore, the Asian Pacific American Bar Association of Maryland, the Women's Law Center, the Simon Sublaw Society, which is the Jewish Bar Association, the Maryland Association of Justice, the Maryland Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, the Maryland Defense Council, the Bar Association of Montgomery County, and the Maryland State Bar Association. That's who does the vetting. That's who has examined your sitting judges. And we have to make it through that in order to be deemed qualified to become a judge. As you have heard, does anybody really think that the Women's Bar Association, the Hispanic Bar Association, the LGBTQ Bar Association are somehow an old boy network? That's kind of silly, isn't it? But each of one of your sitting judges made it through that vetting, and we were found most highly qualified by the groups I just talked about. Thank you very much, Reverend.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pierre.
Thank you, Reverend Moultrie, Miss Anita Powell, the Mount Calvary Baptist Church members, the Lincoln Park Foundation members, and the participants. I want to take a moment of my time to acknowledge the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She had a monumental effect on my life and the lives of so many. I had a chance to meet her twice, and she was just a terrifically wonderful person, and she will be dearly missed. My name is Marilyn Pierre. Please vote for me for Montgomery County Circuit Court Judge. I am number 5 on the ballot. I will practice restorative justice, treat people with compassion, dignity, and respect, and make decisions based on the evidence and the law. Judges are the last line of protection that we have against arbitrary and discriminatory practices. As a lawyer, Army veteran, and a former chair of the Montgomery County Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission, my job has been to protect the people of Montgomery County. Please give me, Marilyn Pierre, an opportunity to serve and protect the residents of Montgomery County on the bench. Please go to my website, pierreforjudge.com, for more information about me. Vote for me, Marilyn Pierre, for Montgomery County Circuit Court Judge. Please vote Marilyn for Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Berry.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I would say one word to describe me is genuine. I left a lucrative career at a high level of private practice because I had a calling to serve. And it's as simple as that. I'm lucky because I'm doing exactly what I'm good at, what serves my joy, and what serves my community. I'm a child of parents who both grew up in poverty, and they fought hard to give their children better. They were educators, and like a lot of Black parents, saw education as the key to personal freedom and success. And that's what I've taken with me throughout my career, the importance of educating myself and then sharing what I've learned with others. I have taught it at every level. I've taught high school, I've taught law school, I've taught lawyers, I've taught attorneys, I've taught experts, I've taught judges. I have substantial trial experience. I'm serious about what I do and the extraordinary magnitude of this responsibility. The best choice I could have made was to give up my practice and devote my career to public service. And I would like your vote to continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Judge Fogelman.
Thank you, Reverend, and thank you to everyone participating in this forum. I think it's a very valuable use of time to educate people about us. One of my greatest strengths as a person, as a lawyer, and as a judge is my ability to meet people where they are. I try to understand the values and styles and needs and emotions of all the people in my courtroom and connect with them in a way that's effective for them. The parties appearing in my courtroom are often suffering through the most stressful experience of their lives. For some, physical or mental disabilities present some additional challenges. Non-English speakers experience additional stress. I was a public defender where I represented people disadvantaged by poverty, education, and health issues. I've been on the Juvenile Justice Commission for 10 years, and during 4 of those years, I served as its chair. I'm one of the 3 judges serving in our mental health court. I volunteer at the Shepherd's Table and with the Women Who Care Ministries. I'm on the Bar Association's Racial Justice Council. So I do meet people where they are, and that is one of the reasons why I'm a good judge. I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
So I thank you, each and every one of you. I hope you feel that your time was well spent. We believe that there was a lot of chat and chatter on YouTube. So the people that were listening were engaged. And so I hope they got what they came for. I say to those people, you have a responsibility to vote, not just you voting, but make sure everyone in your family, everyone in your circle that is able and eligible, please vote. We can't get this right unless we all participate. Each and every one of you, we pray God's blessings on you and that you would continue to serve in whatever capacity He allows you, and that you do that to His glory and to the utmost of your ability. Thank you so much. Have a good night, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you.